Otaku in the Marvel DC Universe. Greetings, fellow multiversal adventurers. It's an honor to have you back in this saga that has us all hooked. Official channel statement: this story is 100% epic fiction, so please don't attempt real magic. The results aren't guaranteed and insurance won't cover it. The rights to this masterpiece belong entirely to its brilliant original author. We are just a barge sharing it with you. Do you want to keep being part of this amazing community? Join our ninja army of subscribers on YouTube and give this content a like. And for true fans, our Patreon has exclusive ninjutsu waiting for you. Chapter 251 Misfortune. A volley of bullets rained down, and the cavalry on the opposite side was instantly thrown into chaos, horses and riders tumbling together in a bloody mess. Most of them had their heads directly pierced by Liang Yue, blood and gore splattering everywhere. Only a few, sensing the danger, immediately turned their horses and fled into the woods beside the road. Against the penetrating power of the bullets, the Yuan Mongol cavalry's cotton armor and saucer helmets were utterly useless. Often, a single bullet could pierce through 4 or 5 people. Faced with such powerful firearms, the cavalry, originally the absolute power on the battlefield, was reduced to mere targets and points of reference. The infantry, who were jogging forward behind them, were so frightened that they stopped in their tracks, their formation scattered under the shouts of their commanding officers. They finally raised their shields and, in a battle formation, chanted slogans as they slowly advanced. It looked impressive, but in this state, the army formation clearly no longer possessed the advantage of rapid support. Meanwhile, the experts from the 6 major sects, who had already arrived behind Liang Yue, obviously had no intention of playing a positional war with the enemy army. Young brother, what kind of weapon is that in your hand? It looks quite unique, and its power is immense. Indeed, young brother, could you introduce it to us? My Mount Hua sect will surely reward you handsomely afterward. Go that way, closer to the city wall. With your skills, you should be able to leave the city in less than 15 minutes. I'll hold the Yuan Mongols here. Facing the Mount Hua elders, who had also jumped onto the wall and were now staring at the Punisher pistols in his hands with shining eyes, Liang Yue didn't even bother to acknowledge them. He simply pointed to the dark side outside the gate of Wanin Temple. Upon hearing this, the experts from the 6 major sects quickly thanked him and then hurried off in the direction he had pointed. The Mount Hua elders, feeling snubbed, were unwilling but still looked at the pistols in Liang Yue's hands with a reluctant expression. However, for the sake of their own lives, they eventually followed the group. Brother Liang, what about you? Zhang Wuji was also standing on the wall at this time, glancing at the pistols in his hand before looking at him and asking, I'll buy you some time. Besides, I still need to go and get Nana and the others out. As for escaping, don't worry about that. I'll have my own way, Liang Yue said with a nonchalant expression. With the protection of the mixed rules, he naturally wouldn't find himself in a situation where he couldn't escape, at least not on this Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber world. Even if he really couldn't do anything in the end and encountered some extraordinary expert, he could just dig a hole and escape underground. Xiao Zhao and the other 2 should have gone to the hiding place according to the plan by now, but the 3 of them are girls, and it's really worrying. Let me go with you. After hearing his words, a hint of hesitation flashed across Zhang Wuji's face, but then he quickly returned to normal and said with a righteous expression, no need. You should take the people from the 6 major sects out of the city. That's what you should be doing now. I'll take them to meet you according to the plan. Facing the battle formation composed of wooden shields more than 100 meters away, Liang Yue decisively raised his pistols again, and his index fingers twitched wildly as if they were having a seizure. Frantically pulling the triggers, he walked and fired. In an instant, countless bullets burst out, carrying trails of fiery light behind them, and collided with a seemingly disciplined elite army on the opposite side. The result, wah. A series of screams rang out in the darkness of the capital city. The solid wooden shields in their hands did provide some defense. At least, Liang Yue's Punisher bullets were blocked by the wooden shields in the 3rd row. After penetrating 2 people in a row, the range of damage was at least more than halved. However, this was not a problem at all for the Punisher pistols, which had unlimited ammunition and a high rate of fire of 10 rounds per second. He could afford to wait, but the Yuan Mongols couldn't. The army on the opposite side couldn't possibly withstand Liang Yue's continuous stream of bullets and pile up bodies to reach him. In fact, after only 6 or 7 seconds, when Liang Yue had successively killed hundreds of shield-bearing soldiers and deliberately blown off the head of the enemy commander, The army on the opposite side collapsed. A large number of Yuan Mongol soldiers began to flee in all directions, this pointless death causing them to break down, separated from the enemy by more than 100 meters, a distance that even their bows and arrows couldn't cross. The enemy could easily inflict heavy casualties on their side, and with extremely accurate attacks. In this situation, no one would be foolish enough to stand still and wait for the enemy to kill them soon. In less than half a minute, only corpses were left on the road opposite Wan'an Temple. Even those who were lucky enough to survive but were seriously injured were now clinging to the ground, slowly crawling into the shadows and under the trees by the roadside. Boom! At this moment, a violent explosion suddenly came from Wan'an Temple behind him. Liang Yue turned his head and saw that the towering pagoda, which had originally stood tall in the temple, had now suffered a violent explosion. Then, it collapsed in his sight. It seems that what I did before was right, clearing out the guards in Wan'an Temple as quickly as possible, not giving them a chance to ignite the explosives. The explosion now should have been caused by the Ming cult's high-level members not cleaning up properly when rescuing the 6 major sects illuminated by the flames of the explosion. Liang Yue slowly turned around, looked at the dark street in front of him, and then, with a tap of his feet, disappeared into the shade of the trees beside the road according to the plan agreed upon in advance with Zhang Wuji and others. Xiao Zhao, Yang Buhu, and Nan had already gone to a civilian house near the base of the city wall that they had agreed upon in advance. However, that place was quite a distance away from Wan'an Temple. Even with Liang Yue running on the beams and tiles at full speed, it took him a full 15 minutes to reach the agreed location. The moment he arrived at this residential area, Liang Yue was shocked because at this moment, relying on his mental perception, which was far beyond that of ordinary people, he clearly felt the aura of more than one expert here. In addition, there was also a group of at least well-trained soldiers lurking in the surrounding shadows. Xiao Zhaobu Nana. After making this discovery, Liang Yue didn't have the mood to play any dilly-dallying tricks. He directly opened his mouth, using his Danshan's true energy as a guide, and called out loudly. The voice was thick and ethereal, directly resounding over the entire residential area. As soon as the ending sound fell, the voices of the 3 girls also sounded, and bright lights suddenly lit up around them. Brother, Liang Yue, quickly take the young master and leave the capital. Don't worry about us. Go. Looking in the direction of the sound, a group of figures appeared on the tall city wall of the capital, illuminated by the firelight. Chapter 252. A last resort. Focusing his eyes, he saw that it was Zhao Minimum. She had changed into women's clothing, dressed elaborately, and was stunningly beautiful. On her left and right side stood a man wearing a bamboo hat and a gloomy old man besides them. There were many soldiers on the city wall, and the 8 heroes of divine arrows were also present at the same time. Lighting up the entire street below were no fewer than 100 Yuan Mongol soldiers, all wearing armor, holding long sabers, and carrying bows and arrows. Fully armed after appearing, they held torches and walked out from their hiding places with sabers in hand, standing on both sides of the street, looking quite imposing. Xiao Zhao, Yang Buhu, and Nana, the 3 girls, were tied up in front of Zhao Min, each with a worried look on their faces. The little girl Nana was already tearful. There were many people in the entire area at this time, at least 400 or 500. Apart from the soldiers below responsible for holding torches for lighting, most of them were concentrated on the city wall. Among them, the one who gave Liang Yue the greatest sense of threat was the gloomy old man next to Zhao Min. His face was full of wrinkles, but his complexion was very pale. He was thin and frail, as if a gust of wind could blow him over. He had no beard, and whether it was his clothing or appearance, he looked like an old eunuch. Secondly, there was the man with a bamboo hat and disheveled hair standing on the other side of Zhao Minimum. With his extraordinary eyesight, even through the veil, Liang Yue could clearly see the old, scarred face of the other party. Liang Yue, long time no see. Zhao Min slowly walked to the crenellation, placed a hand on the city wall, looked at him below, her eyes flickering, and then said with a confident look on her face, "How?" Hearing this, Liang Yue's mouth suddenly curved slightly. With a flip of his sleeve, 2 long swords instantly appeared in his grasp. With a light tap of his feet, his figure instantly became a blur accompanied by a crisp sword sound. In a flash of light, the bright sword blade had cut through most of the street in just a breath's time. The street that was originally lit by torches suddenly dimmed significantly. However, Liang Yue didn't care about her words. Only after another breath, when he had killed almost all the soldiers on the street, did he stop. With a light leap, he instantly stood on the roof not far from the city wall. Looking up at the scene on the city wall, Zhao Min was now holding a knife against Xiao Zhao's neck with a gloomy expression. The man with the bamboo hat and the gloomy old man, who had been standing behind her, also stepped forward, looking at him solemnly, their eyes full of caution and a hint of shock. The 8 heroes of divine arrows all drew their bows and aimed their arrows, together with hundreds of elite soldiers around, waiting in full battle array, staring at him intently. You seem to be very afraid of me, looking at the situation on the city wall. Liang Yue naturally understood that with his current abilities, it was absolutely impossible to rescue the 3 girls unharmed under the encirclement of so many people. At least, conventional methods wouldn't work, so this guy decisively adopted a chatting strategy to delay time. In his heart, he was still hesitating whether he should do that. However, this hesitation only lasted for half a second before he suppressed it. System: after the stronghold world is upgraded, will there be no new villager slots issued? The moment he summoned the villager invitation interface, Liang Yue also questioned the system in his mind. That's right, recruiting the 3 girls on the city wall as his villagers, and sending them directly to the stronghold world at the moment of rule fusion, seemed to be the only reliable way he could think of at present. After experiencing multiple heavens worlds before, Liang Yue happened to have 3 villager slots left in his hand. What made him hesitate was that it seemed a little unworthy to spend such precious slots on the 3 people in front of him, and apart from Nana, he didn't have much interaction with Xiao Zhao and Yang Yue, who, however, since it was to save people, matters regarding the stronghold world upgrade will begin after the host returns. Please check it yourself at that time, okay? Afraid of you? HMPH. The majestic bloodbath Shura easily annihilated thousands of elite soldiers of my great Yuan, yet remained unscathed. I ask you, in this world, who can let their guard down against you? Continuing to the crenellation, looking at the young face below with handsome features, who had just killed dozens of soldiers without changing his expression, Zhao Min gritted her teeth and shouted at him. Then what are you going to do now? Threaten me? Looking up at Zhao Min on the city wall, Liang Yue continued to fiddle quickly on the light screen in front of him, and soon summoned the character bars of Xiao Zhao, Yang Yue, and Nana. Then, he unhesitatingly clicked the send button on the invitation button behind them. Almost in an instant, the 3 people tied to the wooden poles felt something and looked up at him. I want you to join my great Yuan camp. Otherwise, I will kill them. Do you think that's possible? Quickly accept the invitation. What are you saying? Are you agreeing or disagreeing? Using their 3 lives to make me join your great Yuan? What kind of logic is that? Can a princess be so childish? Don't you want to ask about my conditions? It's nothing more than wealth and glory. Those things are readily available to me and have no meaning if it's Just then, when Zhao Min wanted to continue to negotiate terms with Liang Yue, a soft white light suddenly rose behind her, immediately scaring the princess to fly to the side. The man with the bamboo hat and the gloomy old man also instantly guarded her in front of her, only to see at this time, the bodies of Xiao Zhao, Yang Yue, and Nana on the wooden poles were quietly covered by a layer of white halo, which was subtle but exceptionally dazzling in the current environment. Needless to say, the 3 had naturally accepted Liang Yue's villager invitation at this moment and were undergoing the transformation of the stronghold world's rules. Unconsciously, they all began to slowly close their eyes, feeling the mysterious changes in their bodies kill them. Quick, seeing the appearance of the 3 girls now, Zhao Min subconsciously felt that something was wrong, and after a little hesitation, she immediately ordered the 2 beside her. However, at this moment, before the man with the bamboo hat and the gloomy old man could act, a circular opening suddenly appeared behind Xiao Zhao, Yang Yue, and Nana. The edge of the opening was irregular and wavy, cyan and dim, floating constantly. On the other side of the opening was a scene of idyllic paradise with singing birds and fragrant flowers looking at it, vaguely. There were also several beautiful women sitting opposite, chatting and enjoying refreshments accompanied by a soft woo sound. In an instant, the opening swallowed the 3 girls on the city wall at once, leaving only a mottled and abrupt dent on the originally flat and solid ground. Chapter 253. Former Eunuch. Eunuch Yu Tao, take the princess and leave. A shrill voice suddenly rang out the instant the 3 girls were sent away. The speaker was the gloomy old man standing beside Zhao Minimum. After hearing his cry, Liang Yue had no further doubts about his identity as a eunuch. With a flip of his wrist, the twin guns of penetration instantly appeared in his hands. Relying on his gun mastery, which had reached the advanced level, Liang Yue didn't even need to aim at this moment. Based purely on instinct, he raised his hand and unleashed a barrage of shots at the old man on the city wall. Bang 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 bang. However, after a burst of bullets, Liang Yue was shocked to discover that this old man was indeed extraordinary. He looked frail and weak, his body like a withered husk, yet, when he actually moved, he was as elusive as a ghost, his movements extremely fast. Every time Liang Yue's bullets were about to hit him, he could dodge them perfectly. After a few shots, the slippery old man disappeared into the crowd on the city wall, even though the soldiers he used as cover suffered as a result, being torn to pieces by Liang Yue's bullets. He remained unmoved and continued to burrow deeper into the crowd. Release the arrows. Unintentionally, 4 of the so-called 8 heroes of divine arrows had already been shot to pieces by Liang Yue. Therefore, his command sounded particularly shrill in the darkness. However, even though Liang Yue was only a few dozen meters away from the Yuan Mongol soldiers on the city wall, being covered by hundreds of arrows raining down upon him, it still couldn't affect him in any way. With a tap of his foot, Liang Yue's entire body appeared on top of another row of houses. From beginning to end, the twin guns in his hands never stopped firing wherever he went. Bullets transformed into brilliant streamers of light, easily piercing through the defenses on the city wall, leaving behind a scene of bloody carnage. Large amounts of blood mist, along with severed limbs, flew in all directions, and screams of agony echoed endlessly. At this moment, Zhao Min and the man in the bamboo hat had disappeared without a trace, their whereabouts unknown, but Liang Yue didn't care about it. A crisp sound rang out beside Liang Yue, accompanied by a brief spark, before deeply embedding itself into the brick wall in front of him, disappearing from sight. However, in a fleeting glance, Liang Yue could confirm that the thing that had been shot into the wall of the house was actually a flying needle, or rather, an embroidery needle, extremely thin, flashing like silver light in the process of flying, fleeting and as fast as lightning. Embroidery needles again, and ghostly movements. Could this guy be the legendary sunflower ancestor? Surprised, Liang Yue, on the surface, continued to snipe at the old man and the soldiers on the city wall, but inwardly, he began to wander off into his thoughts, thinking about the connections between Jin and Yuang's martial arts worlds. According to the timeline, in the next chapter of Smiling Proud Wanderer, the most dazzling divine skill inheritance, and the most sought after cultivation manual by martial artists, was undoubtedly the Sunflower Manual that had been leaked from the Imperial Palace. However, although the plot construction in the original work mostly revolved around it, the old master introduced very little about the background of this divine skill. He only said that the Sunflower Manual was created by a eunuch from the previous dynasty, and the so-called previous dynasty actually has 2 interpretations. First, it is the period when the previous emperor of the current dynasty was in power. Second, it is simply something from the previous dynasty. Now it seems that the Sunflower Manual had indeed begun to emerge in the late Yuan dynasty. The master who created such a divine skill should have martial arts attainments that are no less than Zhang Sanfeng's, right, innate realm? I'm afraid only a master with a cultivation level above mine can bring me the sense of threat. Of course, he may just be picking up the wisdom of others, learning the inheritance left by his predecessors, but the other party's skill is not fake. It feels like this old man is above me in terms of both cultivation and experience. If that's the case, then let me meet this eunuch from the previous dynasty. Bang 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 boom. Boom boom. After a burst of twin gun fire, Liang Yue detonated several steel ball hand grenades in succession. Under the dense flying steel balls, a large number of Yuan Mongol soldiers were directly riddled with holes. However, from the force transmitted from the blade, Liang Yue could deeply feel the strength of the other party's power. In a brief contact, the true energy wrapped around the flying needle even wanted to extend along the blade in his hand all the way to his body. Unfortunately, Liang Yue noticed it instantly, and with a flash of golden sword light, the remaining small amount of true energy was immediately annihilated. However, this kind of operation is definitely not something that warriors in the acquired realm should have, because even Liang Yue at this time, relying on his acquired peak cultivation realm, plus the characteristics of the Zixa True Key after thousands of tempers, and the blessing of the Kyankan Great Shift, may not be able to do this step. In other words, this old man should indeed be an innate master, right? Thinking of this, Liang Yue also unconsciously licked the corner of his mouth, stretched out his arms, and the long sword in his hand suddenly shone with a golden light. The vigorous sword light actually expanded from the original 1 centimeter to 1 inch in an instant. Young man, the hostility on your body is too heavy, which is very detrimental to cultivation. Along with a shrill voice, the old eunuch with a wrinkled face suddenly appeared in front of Liang Yue like a ghost, his hands drooping, his eyelids drooping, almost covering his eyes. Not as brutal as your master. The brutality of the Mongols is known to the world. Humiliating my Chinese people is even worse than other countries and races. If I can't kill them one by one, it will be difficult to dispel the hatred in my heart. Speaking, Liang Yue suddenly slowly exhaled a breath. He held his breath and concentrated, and began to fully operate the Zixa True Key in his body. In an instant, this guy's eyes suddenly turned purple, and then his entire face, his whole person began to slowly be enveloped in a purple glow. Looking at the vision on Liang Yue's body at this time, the old eunuch also suddenly became interested, and a trace of divine light bloomed in his turbid old eyes, and then he twitched a corner of his mouth and began to mutter to himself, "Ah, so you came for this. National hatred and family hatred cannot be resolved. Ziksha divine art is also a good skill, but it's a pity that you're still a little short of the mark. The sword light has only just been comprehended not long ago, and it is still difficult to use the various mysteries in it, but your body is really surprising. In this world, could it be that there is really some kind of genius treasure that can make people reborn? I have seen some that can increase power, but to strengthen bones and forge the body to this extent, even if you practice Shaolin's golden bell cover to the end, it is difficult to have such a mystery. Ha 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 ha, then let this old one try your quality." Chapter 254, The Gap in Realm. The words had barely left his mouth when the old man proactively approached Liang Yue. Not waiting for his reaction, he moved lightly and swiftly, like a phantom, yet with remarkable agility. In terms of pure speed, Liang Yue would naturally not be at a disadvantage. With his physical prowess far exceeding that of ordinary people, he could certainly be much faster than the old man. However, in terms of combat experience, especially in battles against masters, the old eunuch clearly surpassed him by a significant margin. Liang Yue was like a high-powered supercar, just starting to rev its engine when he was struck by a flying needle. With a swoosh, it came swiftly and fiercely, head-on. Moreover, the old eunuch's timing was perfect, as if the flying needle wasn't a needle but his finger, directly suppressing Liang Yue's momentum. This blockage caused a wave of frustration in Liang Yue's heart. However, Liang Yue didn't panic. Facing the incoming flying needle, he calmly ducked, simultaneously unleashing a horizontal sweep with his long sword. A golden sword light flashed, and an invisible sword wind seemed to materialize from thin air, instantly creating a fan-shaped arced blade in front. The old man, relying on his smooth and agile lightness skill, dodged to the side with a contorted posture, and with a tap of his foot, he shot towards Liang Yue with a strange smile on his face. His withered fingers instantly curved into claws, as if he wanted to engage in close combat. However, Liang Yue wouldn't be so foolish. After the previous probing, he now understood that his combat experience was inferior to his opponent's. Moreover, if he were to be engaged in close combat, not only would his swordsmanship be useless, and his sword light unusable, but he himself would be entangled by the opponent. Therefore, the fellow decisively tapped on the city wall, instantly transforming into a phantom and shooting towards the side, while simultaneously thrusting and slashing at the opponent with his swords. The cold light chilling. Seeing the old eunuch gracefully dodge, Liang Yue suddenly stomped hard in midair, activating the one reed crossing the river ability again. Instantly shooting out like lightning, he wielded his dual swords like two chainsaws, creating a dazzling array of sword light in front of him. However, it was all in vain. The little old man seemed to have predicted it in advance. Without any apparent movement, he seemed to be swinging on a swing, performing a high-difficulty reverse glide, plus a gyro drift. His movements looked so carefree and comfortable, and after finishing, he casually launched another flying needle. However, Liang Yue, after all, had the advantage in physical strength. Whether it was speed or reaction ability, he was far superior to ordinary people. Even if the opponent's movement was strange, he could adapt accordingly. Hey, facing the embroidery needle shot towards the vital point on his waist, the fellow gave a light shout and decisively stomped hard in the air again, instantly changing his rapid forward rush into a diagonal upward flight. At the same time, he took advantage of the momentum to do a front somersault, and the dual swords swept back, instantly unleashing two thick sword energies clang accompanied by a crisp sword hum. Two deep and long slashes instantly appeared on the city wall. In contrast, the old eunuch still maintained a calm and composed appearance, gracefully dodging the attack of the sword energy with a light side jump. Immediately afterward, he launched another flying needle, but it was also swatted away by Liang Yue, who had slowly landed. It's a pity that when I was practicing Great Hammer Fist, I only focused on body refinement techniques, and didn't delve deeply into other fist techniques and swordsmanship. Otherwise, with my physical fitness and reaction ability, I might have been able to go head-to-head with this old man for a while today, but in the end, I should still be lacking in cultivation. Pure combat experience can never reach the level of the opponent. Does this innate realm, in addition to stronger power and higher quality of true energy, also have other aspects of deep-level growth, key induction, crisis warning, or even the more mysterious observation haki? In short, this should be a gap in mental skills. No, I have to play with him some more. Having made up his mind to figure out where the gap was, Liang Yue immediately changed his offensive strategy. He no longer blindly pursued a one-hit kill against the opponent. He even stopped pursuing the need to kill the opponent. Instead, he opened his phoenix eyes wide and focused on observing all the opponent's reactions, from facial changes to body movements, and even every small, subconscious action in response to the enemy while attacking. Liang Yue also invisibly increased his attack speed, wielding his two long swords airtight, and attacking towards various vital parts of the opponent's body. However, the result of doing so was no different from his previous battle with the old eunuch. He still couldn't do anything to the opponent, but in this process, Liang Yue did observe some different things. That is, the opponent seemed to always maintain a certain peaceful state, his mind immersed, his spiritual power showing some signs of diffusion, and his whole person seemed to be integrated with the surrounding environment. Whenever he made a move, the intention of his attack, and even the angle and direction, could be captured by the opponent under the traction of a certain key mechanism. The little old man seemed to have turned into a leaf in the wind, and every attack of Liang Yue seemed to be fanning the opponent. The result obtained was nothing more than the feedback given by the opponent based on his own attack. This is a huge gap in realm. Is it because my cuts are not accurate enough, or my sword speed is not fast enough? With a sense of confusion in his heart, Liang Yue subconsciously stopped his attack at this time, and gently leaped backward, pulling away from the opponent by more than 10 meters. Looking at the old eunuch's somewhat breathless appearance, Liang Yue also understood that his previous attack was not useless. At least he had consumed a lot of the opponent's physical strength. If this momentum continues, the person who wins in the end will definitely be himself. But what's the point of that? Relying on his physical fitness far exceeding that of the opponent, but still unable to quickly take down the opponent, already shows that his cultivation is too shallow. It's better to keep him. Anyway, this old man is in this Datu Imperial City, and come to fight him every once in a while. At least he can be a sparring partner for himself. An innate level sparring partner is not something you can find anywhere. Another battle another day. After having this decision in his heart, Liang Yue no longer insisted on victory or death. Lightly leaving a sentence, and his whole person suddenly disappeared into the night sky. Chapter 255 Innate Path. In the days that followed, Liang Yue began to focus his attention on cultivation. In the past, he felt that his cultivation was quite good, and even when facing a massive army, he could calmly slaughter them with a little time. Those martial artists and Jianghu experts couldn't even last a single round against him. But now, after being educated by that old eunuch, he suddenly realized that he was still far from enough. Far from enough. In terms of pure martial arts, he might not even be as good as Cheng Kun or the Zuanming elders. Before, he was just bullying people with his superhuman physique. Since obtaining the Ziksha divine art, Liang Yue had firmly believed that as long as he followed the methods in the manual and gradually improved the quality of his inner ki, he could successfully use high-quality heaven and earth energy to nourish himself, thereby allowing him to advance to the Xiantian realm. Now it seemed that he had been a bit naive. Xiantian true ki could indeed help him better understand the world, but it was only an aid. The real gap between man and heaven ultimately depended on his own comprehension and the transparency and sublimation of his spiritual level. Just like Jian Mang, this seemingly incredible existence, as long as the swordsman and the sword achieved a connection of mind and spirit, a link of consciousness, a layer of magical energy blade could be applied to the sword. Even if holding the most ordinary piece of iron, it could unleash indestructible power. According to this line of thinking, if the cultivator himself was used as a vessel to connect with spirit and will with the heavens and earth, it would inevitably trigger his own qualitative change and sublimation. In fact, both Jianmang and martial arts internal force are essentially a type of energy. The difference between the two lies in the fact that the former is a wonderful energy attached by heaven and earth, while the latter is a power transformed and nurtured by the human body. Xiantian and Haoshan, natural and artificial. The connection of spiritual power, will, or rather, intent, is the difference between the two in Liang Yue's eyes. So, the path to advancing to Xiantian has always been in my hands. The nameless sword manual, or the Ziksha divine art. The former indirectly connects the cultivator's spiritual will with the heavens and earth through the sword, thus forming Jianmang, while the latter seems to be step by step, but also uses a special kind of heaven and earth power. A touch of purple dawn before sunrise. Two lines of thought, different paths leading to the same goal. The nameless sword manual has a shorter path, and it seems easier to glimpse the mysteries of nature and Xiantian, while the Ziksha divine art takes the traditional path of internal cultivation. Which of these two should I choose? Only children make choices. I want them all, or never choose the path that seems simple, easy, and comfortable. The swordsman, pioneering new paths, advancing bravely. The Taoist, encompassing all things, seemingly without any characteristics. but can take anything and use it. It doesn't seem like there's anything to choose, right? Sword heroes and sword immortals are very handsome, but after all, they still need to be based on internal cultivation techniques. Using techniques to exchange for the Dao is a bit unwise. After figuring out the path he wanted to take, Liang Yue's heart suddenly felt a lot lighter, his mind at peace. And his thoughts clear. The originally somewhat restless sea of mind also became calm and gentle. Moreover, after having the ability to integrate his will into the sword and catalyze Jianming, Liang Yue found that the fusion of his spiritual power and internal force was not too difficult, and after some experimentation, he found that the Zixia True Key after transformation was indeed easier to accept spiritual power than the original reddish inner force that was quietly in the Danshan. The factors involved may be related to the purity, concentration, and even controllability of the True Key to a certain extent. The higher the density and purity of a substance, the higher the degree of fusion with spiritual power, and the warriors will therefore, the Yishan sword, made of black iron sword and refined gold, can have such magical abilities, and over time, it has even given birth to a trace of vague self-will. So, in theory, the better the quality of the sword, the more it can be relied upon by the cultivator and become a medium for communicating with heaven and earth. In other words, a purer body and a strong enough spiritual will are also easier to establish a connection with heaven and earth, because compared to ordinary cultivators, the purer the body, the more it can attract the energy of heaven and earth and nature to descend on itself. Liang Yue can take full advantage of this at this time. In the early morning, as the last trace of purple glow in the sky slowly dissipated, the dawn began to break through the distant mist, slowly rising from the horizon. Liang Yue also began to slowly collect his power at this time, reincorporating the purple clouds surrounding him into his body above his head. A lotus flower that was similar and vague also dissipated. Who, after a long breath, calming his mind, he slowly opened his eyes. Not bad. After trying to integrate spiritual power into internal force, not only has the efficiency of transforming Zixia True Key become faster, but even when absorbing the purple key in the sky, the speed has also increased exponentially. This change is really magical. Why didn't I discover it earlier? I had to rely on that little old man to give me some pointers. But according to this growth rate, it may not even take 10.5 months for the internal force in the Danshan to be completely transformed into Zixia True Key. Right, at that time, coupled with the purple glow in the sky, it may be possible to catalyze Yanshan True Key in the Haoshan stage. After pondering for a moment, Liang Yue then flipped his sleeve and took out the Yishan sword from the storage space. The Yishan sword at this time is still the same Yishan sword, but the 3 secret manuals hidden inside it, 9 Yin Manual, 18 Dragon Subduing Palms, and Dog Beating Staff Technique, have been taken out in order not to damage the quality of this precious sword that had already given birth to a trace of will. Liang Yue had also specially asked the system to take action, directly using telekinesis to take away the secret manuals in order to save space inside the sword. These 3 secret manuals were all written on soft and tough silk fabrics with dense, small characters. Various patterns and meridian operation charts were also all present. However, after obtaining these secret manuals, Liang Yue only picked out the 9 Yin White Bone Claw and Soul Shifting Great Art from the 9 Yin Manual and practiced them. The others, such as the Acupuncture Point Chapter, Acupuncture Point Releasing Chapter, Healing Chapter, Tendons and Bones Forging Chapter, and even the general outline, he just glanced at them. After reading them and understanding the ideas in them, he temporarily put them aside. This 1-year experience in the Yishan and Dragon Slaying world seems not short, but if it is really used in practice, it is actually a bit tight. Liang Yue now has the help of the Earth Spirit Milk, and his internal force has already reached the peak of the Haoshan realm. What he lacks is only to follow the Zixia Divine Art step by step to catalyze a qualitative change. This requires time to hone, and has nothing to do with the exercises. I now understand a little bit of what Wang Chongyang was thinking at the beginning. He clearly obtained the 9 Yin Manual, but he turned a blind eye to this martial art and only tasted it briefly. Presumably, after martial arts reached his level, he had already broken through the secrets between Xianshan and Haoshan. No matter what means were superfluous, no matter how much he practiced, he was still invincible in the world. There was no opponent around him who could talk about scriptures and discuss the future with him. Presumably, he must have regretted not being with Lin Chaoying at that time, right? Furthermore, the existence of the Xianshan skill seems to be even more miraculous than the 9 Yin Manual. The former was passed on to Chuniang, while the latter originated from Wang Shang. Although both of them are Taoist predecessors, the pure Yang real person is still better. Chapter 256 Big and Small Ruai. Ever since they became villagers of Huiz and learned that Liang Yue would only stay in this world for a year, and that they would have to leave with him. Both Xiao Zhao and Yang Yue were practically going crazy. Yang Yue was alright, after all, she hadn't developed any feelings for her uncle Yin Lighting yet, and was just having a hard time accepting it, and was only reluctant to leave her father. Xiao Zhao's side was more serious. She considered herself the maidservant of Great Master Zhang, and had already made vows of eternal love with him, promising to stay together forever. In short, she was making a huge fuss. Moreover, this girl seemed to be carrying some missions given to her by her mother, the Purple Shirt Dragon King. Just when things were getting on track, suddenly, Liang Yue appeared, saying she was going to take her away from this world. Anyone would have a hard time accepting that. However, Liang Yue didn't say much about their reactions, and simply gave them a leave of absence. He also said, "You have less than a year to adapt and accept this outcome. When the time comes, no matter where you are, you will be packaged and taken away by the system." Then, the two girls took advantage of the night and hurried to the meeting place with the Ming cult members and left. Frankly speaking, Liang Yue didn't really want to spend his two precious villager slots to save Xiao Zhao and Yang Yue at the time. After all, there was no bond or emotion as a foundation. Even though the creatures he had slaughtered had already exceeded 100,000, it didn't prevent this guy from keeping his principles in his heart. Under the circumstances at the time, Liang Yue was alone, while the other side had hundreds of people. If he only used conventional means, he really couldn't guarantee that Xiao Zhao, Yang Yue, and Nano would escape unharmed. Moreover, with Xiaomin's cunning personality, if he wanted her to let go of the three of them, Liang Yue would have to agree to a bunch of unequal terms at least. But what kind of person was Liang Yue? Since his debut, when had he ever compromised with bad people? In this case, it was better to be straightforward and simply use the fastest and safest means to save the three women, without saying any more nonsense. Moreover, don't look at Xiao Zhao and Yang Yue's unwilling appearance before. That was just because they couldn't accept it for a while. Time would teach them how to behave, especially Xiao Zhao, when she was really abandoned by Zhang Wuji, and was taken away by the wind, cloud, and moon envoys. With a look of loss and despair, she would no longer blame Liang Yue's current behavior, and Yang Yue's matter was much simpler. No matter what she thought, following Liang Yue was always better than following Yin Lighting. As for Nana, since she was rescued, he had been entrusting her to teacher Shizuka and the others to take care of her. After all, the little girl was only 8 years old this year, which was the most carefree stage in life, and she really shouldn't be living in this chaotic world. Time flew by, and 2 weeks passed in a blink of an eye. During this period, in addition to diligently cultivating, Liang Yue didn't go to the capital city to find the old eunuch as a sparring partner. He felt that he wasn't ready yet. However, this didn't mean that Liang Yue didn't do anything besides cultivation. On the contrary, in these 2 weeks, his name had begun to spread to the entire land of China at an extremely fast speed. The reason for this was because Liang Yue felt that simply meditating and cultivating was not enough for him to grow quickly. Closing the door and building a car was obviously not a good state either. If he wanted to completely master what he had gained in cultivation, he had to go through the tempering of high-intensity practice. So during this time, Liang Yue would naturally obediently find a high place to sit down cross-legged after nightfall, and diligently run the Ziksha divine art, striving to speed up his cultivation progress. But when it came to daytime, after being full of food and drink, he would directly run to the Yuan Mongol armies stationed around the capital city, and fight wantonly and crazily, constantly honing his own skills in the military formations and crowds. As the capital of the great Yuan dynasty, there were naturally a huge number of Yuan Mongol troops stationed here. After occupying the land of China for nearly 100 years, the Yuan Mongols at this time were no longer the small nomadic tribe of only a few 100,000 people on the grassland. In addition, the war was now tight, and the momentum of uprisings everywhere was increasing. The imperial court naturally recruited a lot of people from other ethnic groups. As a result, in just 2 weeks, no less than 80,000 imperial soldiers died at the hands of Liang Yue. In addition, Little King Kong had also been summoned from the pet space again by him, and had made great achievements for him. After half a month of growth, the little guy, who was only less than a foot tall at the beginning and needed to stay in Liang Yue's lapel, had now become a contracted war beast that could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Although compared to a real adult behemoth, Little King Kong was still far behind. But when it faced a proper Yuan Mongol army formation at this time, it could already stand alone, and no longer needed to be worried about by Liang Yue. Contracted war beast, Little King Kong, from a behemoth king war beast group in the Zhang Sanfang Otherworld Tour world bloodline, behemoth level 18 height, 1.91 meters. Talents: tenacious life, intelligence, imitation, strength, agility, paralyzing toxin, combat instinct, size as desired combat skills, scratch, bite the so-called size as desired, the actual performance effect and the literal meaning. There is actually a big difference, or rather, little King Kong may not have been able to completely master this ability at this time. It was even 108,000 miles away from the records and myths and legends. This ability was a new talent that little King Kong had realized on its own when it was promoted to level 10, which really made someone envious. But with this talent, it can now only shrink its body to a limited extent, and the maximum degree of reduction is only the state it was in at level 1, which was less than a foot tall. As for getting bigger, the little guy was powerless and unable to achieve this effect. However, this made it easier for Liang Yue. Originally, he was worried about the difficulty of not being able to take little King Kong out after it grew up, but now with his talent, he could be carefree even in the real world, especially in the land of America. As long as he gets a certificate, raising a monkey as a pet seems to be just a common thing. It was another dawn, and after the purple clouds in the sky slowly receded, Liang Yue began to finish his practice. After absorbing the purple clouds surrounding his body, the increasingly clear purple lotus flower above his head also began to slowly dissipate. After a moment, Liang Yue suddenly opened his eyes, and two purple lights flashed in his eyes like a fast movie. Then a hint of happy smile slowly appeared in his eyes. Ziksha, divine art, great completion. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 257. I actually scared him away. What did you say? Those people have already left. At this moment, Liang Yue stood on the city wall of the somewhat lifeless great capital imperial city, looking at the old eunuch in front of him, and said with a look of astonishment, yes, little friend, as early as 3 days ago, they had already escaped out of the city through the secret passage in the imperial palace, and then went all the way north. But outsiders don't know about this. Only those royals and the relatives and important ministers of the Yuan Mongol clan left. Even the accompanying soldiers and horses, they only took less than 500 people. The little old man was hugging his arms at this time, leaning diagonally on the battlements, with a bit of emotion and sigh on his old face. What secret passage? It can actually allow so many people to leave. Liang Yue was speechless when he heard this, and looked at the dimly lit imperial palace, his tone a little erratic. It has been under construction since the founding of the Great Yuan. It is said that it can lead directly to the distant outskirts underground. Presumably, they themselves know what they have done in the land of China. Sooner or later, they will be overthrown, so they prepared a way out in advance. The old eunuch came to Liang Yue's side at this time, and shook his head with a sigh. The dignified Mongolian royal family, also known as the Golden Family, with noble blood, the huge empire that swept across the east and west in those years, doesn't it have some unknown background? Liang Yue was still a little suspicious, and even asked absurdly. Background is natural. They did conquer many countries and plundered many things back then, but this great Yuan is not the Mongolia of the past. There are still 4 khanates in the Middle East now. The greatest heritage of the great Yuan is in front of you. Except for this old servant, who is already the most powerful existence among their heritage, he still can't do anything to you. As he said that, the old eunuch spread his hands towards him, and then leaned back tactically, showing off himself to Liang Yue, and then continued speaking of little friend, you killed a little too hard before. That was a full army of more than 100,000 elites. In just half a month, you and that monkey swallowed it in one gulp. Squeak squeak. Just as he was talking, little King Kong, who had been shrinking in Liang Yue's chest, suddenly poked his head out, grabbed his collar, bared his teeth at the old man, and made a fierce look. Then he shrank back again. Could it be that monkey is this little guy, a born exotic beast, size it will? Oh, so that's how it is. Alice. It seems that the Yuan Mongols lost this time not unjustly. The more than 100,000 elite troops stationed in the capital were all wiped out, coupled with the uprisings of the anti-Yuan rebels everywhere. The general trend is now gone. Moreover, they are even more afraid of you, that you will directly break through the imperial city and slaughter their clan's bloodline. It is better to be straightforward and take the initiative to retreat. None of them can escape. Little friend is going to hunt them down? I advise you to wait a little longer. Why? Do you want to stop me? This old servant can't stop you, but those Yuan Mongol royals and nobles have also spent a lot of effort in order to escape safely. Not long after leaving the city, they split into dozens of groups and went their separate ways. They are just afraid that you will hunt them down and kill them all. Now that 3 days have passed, Those people are probably already nowhere to be found. As he said that, the old eunuch looked at Liang Yue with a sly smile, and then continued, if little friend wants to hunt them down, wait until those people gather on the grassland before talking about it. But this old servant estimates that this time will take at least 2 or 3 months. They want to reorganize the soldiers from all over the north and retreat to the Mongolian grasslands together. Liang Yue frowned when he heard this, and then asked with some realization, little friend is wise, but the grassland can't support many troops, so when they leave, they will inevitably step up the plunder of food and materials from all over the central plains. And even the population at that time, my Chinese people, will suffer another catastrophe, and famine will spread everywhere. These bastards, bang. Speaking of this, a stern look flashed across Liang Yue's face, and he slammed his fist on the battlements in front of him. The original thick bricks were immediately shattered for a time, gravel flew and dust filled the air. The old eunuch next to him turned a blind eye to this, letting these debris fall on his body, with a bit of emotion and recollection on his face. Little friend cares about the people, it is really a blessing for the world. This old servant entered the palace at the age of 7. At that time, Kublai Khan had just ascended the throne. In those years, it was probably like this now. Although there was no war or chaos, the Yuan Mongols were arrogant and extravagant, causing the people to live in misery. Kublai Khan, as the founding emperor, although he had done some things, but in the end, he couldn't change the overall situation, and in desperation, he could only let it go. From that time on, the imperial court had already launched a looting plan for the land of China. Naturally, it is some gold, silver, wealth, jewelry, books, and some precious medicines, exotic metals, and even natural treasures that are valued by people in the martial arts. As he said that, the old guy waved his hand at him, signaling him to follow, and he took the lead in jumping into the imperial city, and then continued, let's go, this old man will take you to see their collection. This time it was a hasty affair. Those Yuan Mongol royals and nobles only took away a part. They originally wanted to destroy the rest, but this old servant finally persuaded them to stop. After Liang Yue jumped off the city wall, he heard the other party's words, and a bit of sarcasm appeared on his face. Almost, anyway, that's what it means. In addition, they also wanted to use this money to exchange some time with you, and also hoped that this old servant could delay you for half a year for them. As the old eunuch said, he shook his head gently after speaking. The old man suddenly let out a burst of laughter like a vulture hiccuping. Delay me for half a year? They have good calculations, but I don't think you can hold me back. This old servant naturally can't stop little friend from leaving, but if little friend wants to quickly advance to the innate realm, perhaps you should consider it. What do you mean? Little friend went to Mount Hua sect some time ago. Since you have already obtained the Xixia divine art, I presume the Xiantian art has also fallen into little friend's hands, right? Yes, but the condition for practicing the Xiantian art is that there must be at least one innate level true energy in the body. Could it be that there is something in the Yuan Mongols' treasury? Is there some kind of natural treasure that can make people derive innate energy? Yes, but there are not many. The only one that can truly achieve what little friend said is one kind left. Originally, those people wanted to pull it out, but this old servant persuaded them to stop. In addition to this, there are mostly some cultivation method books from the Buddhist and Taoist schools. Others only remember that the once famous Kwanzaan sect was destroyed by the Yuan Mongols. In fact, relatively speaking, another lineage of Taoist inheritance also suffered heavy losses at the hands of the Great Yuan. Are you talking about the Longhu Mountain lineage? Yes, just now you said that those Yuan Mongols almost pulled out that natural treasure that can derive innate energy. According to you, is that natural treasure a kind of medicinal material? That's right. Does it take a lot of time to refine this medicinal material? Can it actually buy half a year for the Yuan Mongols? Deriving innate energy is only a part of the medicinal effect of that treasure. Using this to advance to the innate realm is what little friend seeks, right? It does take a lot of time to advance to the innate realm. It's so magical. Chapter 258. A bunch of poor people. The two passed through a desolate palace, heading straight into the inner court. Along the way, they encountered a few eunuchs and palace maids, but they were all trembling with fear, not daring to speak upon seeing Liang Yue and the old eunuch. They were even more terrified, shaking like leaves. Clearly, these people, who spent their days within the imperial city, idly speculating about others' thoughts and engaging in palace intrigue, had realized the gravity of the situation after discovering that their masters had all disappeared. They feared being torn apart and eaten by the rebel army or the common people who might suddenly storm into the palace. However, Liang Yue and the old eunuch had no time to pay them any attention. After passing through a grand hall, They used their lightness skills, leaping several times before arriving at a seemingly inconspicuous abandoned courtyard. The area within the imperial city's harem was vast, with rows of such courtyards built. The two were now standing on the wall, and even Liang Yue couldn't see the edge at a glance. This is the legendary Cold Palace, inhabited by pitiful people who are out of favor or have committed mistakes. Some don't even have a maid or eunuch to look after them. In the past, someone would come to deliver food every day, but now they can only wait for death. Noticing Liang Yue's gaze sweeping to the side, the old man casually explained, "Didn't those Mongols take them away too?" Liang Yue frowned upon hearing this and asked, "Those imperial descendants, who would care about the lives of some crazy women?" The old eunuch shook his head and sighed upon hearing his words creak. "Who are you calling crazy?" A woman pushed open the door of a room in the small courtyard below, then casually threw a teacup, which was caught by the old eunuch on the wall. It had to be said that the woman's technique for throwing things suggested she had some martial arts skills. "Oh, it's Consort Song. You're still so spirited." This old servant greets you as he spoke. The old eunuch actually bowed to the woman below. "So it's Eunuch Cheng. Why do you have time to come to our place today? But there's something you need to take care of. You are the most senior person in this inner court. You must know that although we sisters are unfortunate and unwelcome, it's been several days since anyone brought us food, not even water. If this continues, we won't be able to survive even in the cold palace. This is unacceptable." This Consort Song was a beautiful and dignified woman. You must have heard what this old servant said. Now, the imperial family and high-ranking dignitaries in the entire capital city have fled north. This old servant estimates that they will never be able to return in their lifetime. The people in the palace are now overwhelmed, so it's difficult to take care of you. The old eunuch explained to her with a bitter smile, showing no airs of a ancient master. "Nonsense. What do you mean fled north? The imperial court is now strong and powerful. There are 200,000 soldiers stationed around the capital city at all times. Those rebel armies are just small-scale disturbances. How can they achieve anything?" The woman scolded the old man upon hearing this, but her expression revealed some surprise. "The army stationed near the capital has almost all died. The Mongols are now terrified of being killed and are gathering their remnants to flee to the grasslands. However, it wasn't the rebel army that did it. This person beside me is the real culprit." As he spoke, the old eunuch pointed to Liang Yue beside him. "I did hear that a fierce man appeared in the martial world some time ago, capable of fighting 10,000 men. May I ask, how does this lord intend to deal with us?" After a moment of Consort Song looked over with a nervous expression. Liang Yue blinked upon hearing this and then asked, "How did you end up in the cold palace?" "Because I accidentally knocked over a cup of wine bestowed by a Mongol princess. Actually, it's just that my father was used by the court and lost power." "Are you Han?" "Most of the people in this cold palace are Han, and there are also a few from the former Dali kingdom, and some from the Miao region." "Oh, I see. Then how about you gather them together and form a sect?" Is the lord talking about establishing a martial arts sect?" Consort Song's eyes lit up upon hearing this, while the old eunuch looked somewhat surprised. "Yes, and those eunuchs and palace maids, they are all pitiful people. If they are willing, why not bring them together and form a sect?" As he spoke, Liang Yue turned his gaze to the old eunuch beside him and continued, "How about you, old man? Take the lead in this matter? Is little friend not afraid that this old one will take the opportunity to cause trouble? You're already so old, you don't have many years left to live. What trouble are you going to cause?" Ho 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 ho. Little friend is a straightforward person, and this idea sounds fresh. It makes this old one a little tempted. But after this sect is established, what rules and regulations should be used to guide them? Annihilate the foreign races, protect the Huaxia. Then the sect should be established in the north. Little friend, give me an idea. How about Zhongnan Mountain? I don't expect you to wholeheartedly pursue Taoism. Just don't bully the surrounding people." As soon as Liang Yue finished speaking, the old eunuch immediately raised his head and said to the clear blue sky, "Did you all hear that? Hurry up and come out and thank the little friend for his grace." At this moment, his voice was not loud, but he used some kind of true key technique, and the sound spread far away in an instant. Then, a group of women and eunuchs walked out of this cold palace street, bowing to Liang Yue's side. "Thank you for your grace. Okay, I'll tell sect leader Zhang about this later." Liang Yue felt a headache upon seeing this, and always felt that he had just promised something unusual. "From what little friend said, you don't plan to sit on the throne?" the old eunuch asked with a surprised expression upon hearing this. "I come from another world. This time I'm here only for experience. I will leave after a year, but before leaving, I will definitely go to the grasslands again." No wonder this old one was wondering. The methods that little friend used before are not something that ordinary martial artists like me can use, but is little friend so sure that Zhang Wuji will be able to ascend to the throne in the future? In short, It should be someone from the Ming cult, okay, as long as little friend keeps this matter in mind. As he spoke, the old eunuch continued to fly forward with Liang Yue. Just after crossing the courtyard wall of the cold palace, they arrived at a somewhat desolate garden, withered branches and leaves, overgrown with weeds. At a glance, it was clear that no one had come to take care of this place for a long time, but even in such a place, Liang Yue immediately found a messy row of footprints on the ground. The end of the footprints all led to an inconspicuous well. Chapter 259 Spiritual Sweet Potato. Complete Quanzon Swordplay Golden Goose Skill. 1 key, 3 purities. This is the supreme swordplay of the Quanzon sect. It is said that when practiced to the highest level, one can stab 18 swords in a row, and each sword can be divided into 3. When attacking, one relies on the strength of the wrist to shake and infuse true energy. The sword moves can be transformed from 1 into 3. I also practiced this move back then. Although I didn't practice it to the highest level, the technique of transforming one sword into 3 has already been integrated into my own moves. Oh, I thought this was that Yubu. Yubu what? It's nothing. Treading frost shattering ice palm Big Dipper array of the heavenly gang. This is actually a legacy of unique skills. This array was not easy to obtain. In my opinion, even Zhang Liudao's true martial 7 interception array of the Wudang sect is inferior to it. It's a pity that no one in this imperial court is willing to practice it. The imperial court has thousands of troops and horses, as well as powerful crossbows and longbows, and other long-range weapons. Practicing this kind of array is indeed a bit laborious and unrewarding. A pure yang mysterious skill. The cultivation method left behind by Chu Chuji's lineage is comparable to Zixa divine skill, each with its own strengths, but its nature is more domineering. When practiced to great success, it may not be impossible to compete with 9 Yang divine skill Dragon Elephant Prajna skill, the protector divine skill of Tibetan Tantric Buddhism, but it is said that it is widely spread. Even ordinary believers on the plateau can learn it, but it is easy to learn but difficult to master, and it takes too long. It is said that apart from its creator, the highest realm achieved in ancient times was only the 10th level. In short, this can be considered a unique skill. Flaming Saber, another unique skill of Tibetan Tantric Buddhism, a method that can stimulate flames with internal force. It is very peculiar, but I think it is a bit flashy and impractical. 9 Heavens Thunderclap. True scripture? What kind of skill is this? The treasure of the Dragon Tiger Mountain lineage of Taoism is extremely strong and masculine. One can unleash thunderous sounds with a punch, and it can be cultivated from the acquired realm all the way to the innate realm. It is said that after cultivating this skill to the innate realm, one can summon lightning from the void to defend against enemies, but I have never seen it, nor have I practiced it. It is also a divine skill level technique. It seems that it should not be fake. Right back then, it happened that the Dragon Tiger Mountain lineage was declining, and the inheritor of this skill was unable to advance to the innate realm. I did not witness its true power. Great shift of the universe. You guys even got this skill? There's even Sacred Flame Token skill. The Central Earth Ming cult is full of talents and is indeed difficult to deal with, but it is said that Persia has long been weak and it is not difficult to take it down. However, the Sacred Flame Tokens are good treasures. There are 6 in total. Although the Great Yuan dynasty was unable to snatch them all at once, they later forged 3 more sets with the same material. Now, 2 of them already have owners and were taken away together 3 days ago. The other set is still left in this treasure house. If you are interested, young friend, you can take them all. Supreme Clarity Key Skill? A unique skill lost by the Kangtong sect for nearly 100 years, it is indeed the inheritance of that divine skill. Only the head of each generation of the Kangtong sect is qualified to practice it. It is said that after completing it, one will be invincible in the world. Although it is a bit of an exaggeration, its power is indeed extraordinary. In my opinion, it should be stronger than Zixa divine skill, and may be able to compete with 9 Yang divine skill, but it is slightly inferior to innate skill and 9 Heavens Thunderclap. True scripture. However, no one in this imperial city can master it, and it has very high requirements for the cultivator's state of mind, and it is also largely incompatible with my path. Another unique skill. The secret manuals are all here. The rest are some second and third-rate martial arts. You can slowly look at them later, young friend. In addition, there are also some military books and craftsman books. However, I think you may not be interested in those. There is also an armory over there. Most of the finished products have already been taken away, and the rest are forging materials. Let's go. I'll take you to see that precious medicine first. As he spoke, the old eunuch led Liang Yue towards the depths of the vast treasure house. In front of him, Needless to say, the place where the two are now is the royal treasure house located below the well. After opening a mechanism, a staircase appeared. The entire treasure house is very large, even more so than the forbidden area of the Ming cult, and its main part directly leads to a scenic mountain in the suburbs. A moment later, the two arrived at an unusually spacious underground cave. This place is vast in area, at least half the size of a football field, and there are traces of artificial excavation around it. The layout of this cave is also very special. There are no torches lit around, but it does not feel dark at all because at this moment, above the cave roof, a huge crystal is lying across it, occupying at least 2/3 of the entire top. Streams of soft sunlight are now slowly falling down, shining on the deep greenery below. Vaguely, above the crystal wall, it seems that there are still water waves flowing, rippling and swaying in circles. The light shining through the cave is also refracted, sometimes bright and sometimes dark, and occasionally reflects rainbow-colored light. Is there a lake up there? Liang Yue looked up at the dreamlike scene on the top of the cave at this time, and for a moment, his heart was inevitably filled with intoxication. However, he was soon attracted by the vine plant growing in the center of the cave. There's no way, although the scenery in front of him is pleasing to the eye, it is still far behind compared to the intoxicating fragrance in the air. Liang Yue was now suppressing the joy and elation in his body and slowly walked towards that side. This is a spirit vine that the Mongol army discovered in the western regions back then. It is said that it seemed to grow in the temple of an ancient country. After the country was destroyed, it was brought back to Central Earth by a Mongolian wizard. The environment here is also completely modeled after that temple. According to my guess, this spiritual object may not be able to withstand too much intense sunlight, so it needs to be blocked by lake water. Turning his head to look at the old eunuch's solemn appearance, Liang Yue immediately rolled his eyes, but he did not refute anything, but pointed at the plant and said, "Is that a gourd vine? Hopefully it's normal for you not to recognize it, young friend. This precious medicine is actually a unique plant in the western regions, called sweet potato. Its essence is actually grown underground. So it's a spiritual sweet potato vine." In the following time, the old fellow explained to Liang Yue the taboos and precautions for eating this spiritual sweet potato, and then repeatedly instructed him on some tips and key points for breaking through the innate realm. After Liang Yue digested these contents, he did not directly enter cultivation, but returned to the abandoned garden in the imperial palace. After some simple reclamation and irrigation, he took out a batch of potatoes, carrots, sweet potatoes, corn, sugar beets, tomatoes, and other high-yield crops and vegetables from the stronghold world and planted them. After instructing the old eunuch to take care of them, he returned to the underground again. Chapter 260. Thousands of miles of sound transmission. Zhuan Wood Spirit Potato, a spirit-grade treasure medicine, containing rich wood-type spiritual energy. The plant's sap has the effects of healing, purifying the body, and communicating with spirits. The root fruit can be eaten directly. This spirit plant likes light, likes humidity, is easy to grow, and can be transplanted by transplanting seedlings or root fruits. As expected, those Yuan Mongolians were just messing around before. What do they mean the sunlight can't be too strong? It's easy to raise. But this crystal wall is quite unique. After returning to the underground treasure house, Liang Yue still didn't immediately intend to cultivate. After all, he still understands the principle of a cunning rabbit. Having 3 burrows advancing to the Xiantian realm is undoubtedly a very important matter for him. He must not be disturbed during this period. Although the old eunuch seems very sincere now, he doesn't dare to bet his future on the other party's sincerity. So, Liang Yue, following the system's guidance, dug out the entire spirit potato, then cut off a few strong vine branches and sweet potato tubers, and handed them over to Dekushima and the others in the stronghold world, asking them to cultivate them well. By the way, after entrusting little Vajra to them as well, he himself then dug out a small path from the side, which extended all the way to the ground. Liang Yue, who has cultivated a Ziksha divine art, even with a spirit potato to assist him, still cannot ignore the bonus effect of the heaven and earth energy, especially after practicing this divine art to the great accomplishment realm. Every time before the dawn breaks, when the Ziksha appears, he can clearly feel a wonderful essence of heaven and earth pouring in from afar. That vast energy is urging Liang Yue to continuously accelerate the rate of cultivation, improving and transforming the quality of Ziksha true Qi. It can even be said that his entire night of cultivation may not be as efficient as the short period of time when the Ziksha first rises. The closer he got to the later stages, when Liang Yue's Ziksha true Qi was closer to great accomplishment. This situation began to become more and more obvious now that the internal energy in his body has been completely transformed into Ziksha true Qi. What surprised this guy is that the quality of Zixa true key is still improving. There is no mention of Earth attribute spiritual energy, but even so, I can still vaguely obtain a trace of Earth-like heavy spiritual rhyme from that spirit milk. Analyzing it this way, this so-called wood-type spiritual energy should be of a higher level, but can the Zixa divine art be compatible with wood-type spiritual energy? After building a stone house on a high mountain top with multiple layers of reinforcement, Liang Yue looked at the setting sun slowly disappearing on the horizon, feeling somewhat puzzled. Then, he subconsciously looked at the few spirit potatoes next to him, which had been washed clean and had delicate pink skin exposed. I'll try it later. System, how should I eat this sweet potato, Ling? Eating it raw is the most effective. Roasting it will lose some of the spiritual energy, but it tastes better, which is not recommended. I mean, will that wood-type spiritual energy conflict with my Zixa divine art, Ling? No, but some of the attributes of wood-type spiritual energy will be integrated into the host's body. Then, is this good or bad for me, Ling? Please experience it yourself, host. It seems that even if there's an impact, the problem won't be too big. Waving his hand to put the spirit potato next to him into the storage space to prevent the spiritual energy from dissipating, leaving only one in his hand staring at the pink and tender fruit in front of him, Liang Yue swallowed subconsciously. The volume of this spirit potato is not very large, about like 2 eggs connected together, with many roots growing on the surface, but the energy contained within is far greater than that of the same volume of earth spirit milk. Like ordinary sweet potatoes, the skin of this spirit potato is also very thin, but it has a considerable isolation effect, which can obviously prevent a loss of spiritual energy. However, when Liang Yue cut off this root fruit, he inevitably damaged some of its skin and flesh. Strands of wood-type spiritual energy that made people intoxicated were constantly wafting over, mixed with a unique fragrance of herbal medicine. Liang Yue sniffed hard at this time, his mouth wide open, and strands of mucus had already formed between his lips and teeth. But just as he was about to stuff it into his mouth, he suddenly thought of something. So, this guy immediately flipped his sleeve, and somewhat dejectedly, threw the spirit potato in his hand into the storage space. I almost forgot a major event, with a thought. Liang Yue immediately summoned the villager exchange platform and sent a video request to Xiao's avatar above. And then, how dare you hang up on me, so ignorant. Then, Liang Yue sent a request to Yang Bu, who again, sure enough, this little girl doesn't have any prejudice against him. After waiting for less than 10 seconds, it connected. What's the matter? The little girl lowered her voice and asked Liang Yue, with a hint of nervousness and shyness on her face. However, it seems that this little girl Yang Bu who really doesn't know how to whisper, and she didn't realize that deliberately lowering her voice would actually carry further through the video screen. Yang Bu, who seemed to be in a decent hall at this time besides her, Xiao Zhao, Zhang Wuji, a group of high-level Ming cult members, the 5-element banner leaders, and even some experts from the 6 major sects were also present. Judging from this, these people are having a meeting now. If the little girl spoke normally, it wouldn't be a problem. But now that she lowered her voice like this, it immediately attracted the attention of a group of sharp-eared experts in the hall. In the next moment, a group of old Jianghu people turned their attention to the corner where she was, and one of them, a handsome old man, walked directly towards this side. Liang Yue recognized this person. He was Yang Xiao, the bright left envoy of the Ming cult, and Yang Bu, whose father. When Zhang Wuji and others came to Dadu to rescue the 6 major sects, he had been staying at the Ming cult headquarters to preside over the overall situation and handle the daily affairs of the sect. Well, don't be nervous. I just want to convey some messages to sect leader Zhang and the others through you. Looking at Yang Bu, whose delicate little face, which couldn't hide her rosy complexion, Liang Yue smiled at the little girl and explained, "Is that Brother Liang's voice? Brother Liang, have you come? Please show yourself." As soon as Liang Yue finished speaking, Zhang Wuji, who was perking up his ears not far away, immediately reacted and said loudly, "I'm going." Yang Bu, who turned on the speakerphone. Chapter 261, Entrustment and Commitment. Sect leader Zhang, no need for formalities. I am currently still in Dadu, but I've contacted everyone through a special method to convey some information. As he spoke, Yang Bu, who was grabbed by her father and pulled to Zhang Wuji's side, the young girl's face immediately turned pink, with a hint of unease and her eyes darting around. I didn't expect Brother Liang to have such means. Truly astonishing. Looking at Zhang Wuji's surprised expression, Liang Yue secretly sneered in his heart. He thought, just pretend. With Xiao's devoted affection for you, I don't believe you haven't heard about the villager platform from her. However, because sect leader Zhang isn't a villager, he can't see any images related to the platform, even in public broadcast mode. He can only hear the sound, but that's already enough. Sect leader Zhang should already know about the Mongol royalty and noble officials fleeing north, right, indeed. Oh, right, speaking of this, I must introduce someone to Brother Liang. This is our main cult's right emissary of light, Fan Yao, who previously disguised himself as Qiu Tao Chua during the last rescue of the 6 major sects. It was with right emissary Fan's assistance that I was able to obtain the antidote to the 10 fragrance tendon weakening powder. As he spoke, Zhang Wuji solemnly introduced Liang Yue to a middle-aged man on his right, whose face was covered with a veil and dressed in low-key gray clothing. I am ashamed to say that when Zhao Min used Xiao Zhao, niece Buhu, and that girl Nana to threaten the young hero, I was unable to help. This confirms it with this right emissary of light present. Zhang Wuji must know about the villager platform and even the things in the outpost world. However, Liang Yue didn't really care about this right emissary Fan, no need to mind it. The situation at the time was indeed critical, and there were experts stationed on the imperial court's side, so it was indeed not suitable for right emissary Fan to take action. After speaking, Liang Yue ignored him and turned to Zhang Wuji. Now, let's get down to business. When the Mongols retreated using the secret passage, they dispersed. I only learned about the whole story 3 days later when I personally arrived at the palace. Alice. After a sigh, Liang Yue then spoke about his concern that the Mongols would mobilize troops from various places in the north and plunder the people's food and grass when they retreated to the grasslands. After hearing this, everyone fell silent, with expressions of indignation and worry on their faces. However, most of them adopted an attitude of indifference towards this matter. I am somewhat beyond my reach in this matter. I wonder what strategies the Ming cult and the 6 major sects have. Thank you for the reminder, Brother Liang. We were actually discussing the situation after the Yuan Mongols retreated, but we only saw the advantages of the situation and didn't pay attention to the suffering of the people. Truly ashamed. But rest assured, Brother Liang, our Ming cult will definitely take responsibility for this to the end. After a period of uncertainty on his handsome face, Zhang Wuji finally agreed to Liang Yue's request with a resolute expression. However, the Ming cult executives around him were shocked and stunned vaguely. Their expressions seemed to carry a hint of embarrassment, wanting to dissuade him but feeling it wasn't the right time. But this was understandable after all, from a macro perspective. The Mongols were about to retreat voluntarily, and they didn't need to do anything else when the time was right. They just needed to take over the territory, and there was no need to fight the opponent to the death. As for the people whose food was plundered, they were now powerless, and even if they wanted to provide assistance, they didn't have enough strength, and they could only wish them good luck. But now, their leader had taken the initiative to assume this responsibility, and in front of many experts from the 6 major sects, it was equivalent to announcing to the world that they would settle the matter with the Mongols as soon as possible. But the Ming cult didn't seem to be ready for this, whether in terms of troops, military planning, financial resources, and so on. The reason for this was probably that Liang Yue's previous actions had too much impact on the current situation, scaring the Mongols in just half a month. However, sect leader Zhang's decision also had many advantages, namely reputation and legitimacy. In this era, forces and groups that dared to stand up for the people would generally receive the support of the people. The Ming cult could also take this opportunity to overthrow its past reputation as a demonic cult in the Jianghu martial arts world and even among the common people, and instead appear as a savior. Then I will leave it to sect leader Zhang. By the way, you should also need money to raise troops to resist the Mongols, right? Datu City is now leaderless, and there are probably only 1,000 or so guards left in the entire city. I think sect leader Zhang should send someone over as soon as possible, preferably to gain a foothold. Whether it's the gold and silver that the Mongols didn't have time to transport, or the family vaults of some dignitaries and traders in the city, there should be a lot of good things hidden there, which will definitely help the anti-Yuan cause. In fact, in the previous underground treasure vault, Liang Yue did find a lot of gold and silver, various gold bricks, gold bars, silver bricks, silver bars, jewelry, gold and silver utensils, rare antiques, and so on, almost countless. At the very least, the wealth in that treasure vault would not be less than the gold vault in the dwarf city in the Hobbit world. Of course, it was still far behind the wealth that the Demon King Soren had plundered from almost the entire Middle Earth world. These were all the people's fat and blood. Liang Yue only tasted it, searching for a small batch of exquisite gold and silver jewelry and antique calligraphy and paintings from this treasure vault, putting them into the outpost world for collection, and then ignored them. Those wealth are all Brother Liang's. Looking at Zhang Wuji's hesitant and surprised expression, Liang Yue rolled his eyes. Those are all external possessions, useless to me. After you come to Datu Imperial City, find an old eunuch, I'm right, emissary fam should know him. He's a Xiantian level expert. Let him take you to the underground treasure vault in the palace, and just have people take the gold and silver away. Alright, there's something else to say. Please speak, Brother Liang. That old eunuch can be considered to have been kind to me. In the previous exchange, he guided me through the bottleneck of breaking through the Xiantian realm, so when we met again later, I promised him one thing. What is it? Brother Liang, just say it. It's just that this time, after that group of Mongol royalty retreated, they left behind a group of pitiful people, the eunuchs in the palace maids, and some unfavored Han concubines in the cold palace at that time. I promised to let them be free and let them build a sect separately, with the purpose of exterminating foreign races and protecting China. Ha. This is just a small matter. In addition, I also promised them a mountain as a place to establish their secto. Which mountain? Mount Zhongnan. That is the land of my dignified Taoist immortal mansion. How can it be given to that group of eunuchs, palace maids, and a group of unpopular young widows to establish a sect? This may be a little inappropriate, right? The second elders of Mount Hua came out at this time, their wretched faces with a bit of embarrassment. However, their current opposition was also very legitimate. After all, their Mount Hua sect was originally a branch of the Quansun sect, and the ruins of the Quansun sect's ancestral court still stood on Mount Zhongnan. So bold, the ancient tomb sect has always had inextricable links with the former Quansun sect, and the time of its establishment is no later than that of the Quansun sect. I promised Brother Liang this matter. Moreover, Brother Liang also said that the leader is a Xiantian level senior, and if such a person wants to establish a sect, even my Grandmaster Zhang Zhenren, I am afraid, will only send a congratulatory note at the critical moment. Sect leader Zhang was indeed able to make a decision, suppressing everyone present with the names of two Xiantian experts, and everyone was speechless. In that case, I thank you. Then let's leave it at that for now. I wait. Young hero, please wait. Just as Liang Yue was about to say goodbye to everyone, one of the second elders of Mount Hua jumped out again, rubbing his palms together, and then continued with an anxious look. I wonder, young hero, have you seen our Mount Hua sect's Xiantian Guang? A while ago, we were captured to Dadu by that group of Yuan Mongols, and when the disciples were cleaning, they were clumsy. Who knew that a gust of wind happened to blow by at that time, and accidentally blew that secret manual off the cliff. The other of the second elders of Mount Hua also came up immediately, echoing as if they were singing a duet. Today, we have seen the magical skills displayed by the young hero, and we are very amazed. Therefore we would like to ask the young hero to help us see, can our Mount Hua sect still find that secret manual? We will definitely not trouble the young hero for nothing. If we can find it, our Mount Hua sect will definitely repay you handsomely in the future. Yes, definitely repay you handsomely. Chapter 262. Finish your past. The innate skill is with me. Let's wait until half a year later. You guys find a decent disciple and come over to transcribe a copy from me. Looking at the two cautious treasures in front of him, Liang Yue pondered for a while before replying to them. Oh, that's really great. Now, we can give an explanation to Mount Hua. But why does young hero have to wait until half a year later? That's right, if we're talking about decent disciples, our Mount Hua sect has ready-made ones. Ruzu, come over here, young hero, please take a look. What do you think of my eldest niece? Not only is she beautiful and knowledgeable, but her aptitude for martial arts is also top-notch. It seems that young hero was the one who saved her from those Mongols last time. Young hero, do you still remember? Sect leader martial uncle, please have some self-respect. Looking at the lewd appearance of the two elders of Mount Hua, as if they were pimping not only Liang Yue on the other side of the light curtain, but also the group of people around him, all looked at these two with disdain. As for Ning Ruzu, the person involved, she looked embarrassed and indignant. Her heroic face, full of chivalry, was flushed red. The reason why I chose half a year later is because I have now found an opportunity to break through the innate realm. The entire process of breaking through may take a long time. The specific time is difficult to determine. Alice, I am ashamed to say that if it were not for this rare opportunity, I should have already been on the road chasing and killing those Mongols. Liang Yue didn't intend to hide anything about his breakthrough. Anyway, even if he said it now, the other party definitely wouldn't be able to find him. I see. Then let's do as young hero says. Let's set the date of the Dadu city in half a year. When the crowd on the opposite side heard Liang Yue's words, they were all shocked, and Zhang Wuji's face showed an incredible expression. However, the two elders of Mount Hua reacted quickly and wisely did not dare to say anything more than let's do this. Young hero, please wait a moment. Just as Liang Yue was about to hang up, The sect leader of the Kangtong sect, dressed in red robes, suddenly jumped out and stretched out 5 thick, calloused fingers towards the screen. When everyone in the hall turned their attention to him, the sect leader of the Kangtong sect hesitated and continued to speak. May I ask, young hero, do you have any that news about our Kangtong sect's treasure? What treasure? Liang Yue raised his eyebrows slightly upon hearing this, and asked with a smile on his lips. It's that treasure inside the secret ancestral cave of our Kangtong sect. Never seen it, don't know this. The sect leader of the Kangtong sect fell into a dilemma upon hearing this. However, he was also clear in his heart at this time how important his family's treasure was. Now that it had been taken away, and the situation was stronger than others wanting to get it back with just empty words was just a luxury, but that was the foundation of his sect after all, a secret that was not passed down. If it was lost like this, Liang Yue watched the other party's hesitant appearance, so he added fuel to the fire and urged, since there's nothing else, then I'll wait a minute. Cough, let's put the treasure aside for now, but our Kangtong sect has also lost a unique skill recently, called Swift Meteor. It's a lightness skill. I wonder if young hero can help find it. After the Kangtong sect leader finished speaking, he immediately lowered his head with a look of disappointment. Swift Meteor is with me. Let's set the date in half a year. Still in Datu City, you find someone to transcribe it. Looking at the other party's dejected and crestfallen appearance, Liang Yue also shook his head gently, thought about it, and then continued. Oh right, I once obtained a secret manual called Supreme Purity Key Skill in the treasure house of the Mongols. That should be from your Kangtong sect, right? Supreme Purity Key Skill? That is a unique skill that our Kangtong sect has lost for nearly 100 years. It turned out to have been stolen by those bastards. Thank you, young hero. I wonder if young hero has ever seen my ME6 Heaven Reliant sword. Joe's hero also stood up at this time. Never seen it, but I did get a copy of the 9 Yin manual, which should have some connection with your ME sect. Wait until you guys come over and transcribe a copy as well. 9. Thank you, young hero. Alright, that's it. After hanging up, clearing a little distraction from his mind, and sitting there calmly for a while, Liang Yue then turned his hand and took out a fragrant spirit potato. 2 rows of big white teeth rubbed together, and then he directly swallowed it into his mouth in 2 bites. Boom! In an instant, accompanied by sweet juice and pulp, a huge energy suddenly bloomed in Liang Yue's mouth, like a rolling torrent. With an explosive power, it filled his entire mouth. Under a moment of carelessness, drops of juice were accidentally sprayed out by this fellow, dripping in front of him, and then quickly evaporating into mist. Lingering in the stone room in front of him, strands of substantial spiritual energy were constantly spewing out from his 2 nostrils. Of course, more spiritual energy was actually surging into his stomach along his throat in large gulps. In just one breath, the skin all over Liang Yue's body began to show a faint green glow. This was not the kind of unnatural, poisonous color. This halo seemed to have a kind of uprightness and vitality intertwined, showing a verdant color. Liang Yue was enduring the feeling in his mind that was so comfortable that he was about to faint, rolling his eyes, and trying to use the purple cloud divine art to form a layer of shield around his body. This barely prevented the overflow and waste of spiritual energy, but in just a moment, Liang Yue's true energy shield, which should have been rising with purple energy, was reflected into verdant color by the green light inside. Looking at it from the outside, this was clearly a green light egg. However, Liang Yue didn't have time to think about this at this time. After quickly chewing the pulp twice in his mouth, he hurriedly used the purple cloud divine art. Facing the eastern night, he fully transformed the exuberant energy in his body that was a little too much. At the same time, just as Liang Yue fell into a state of cultivation and gradually began to become oblivious to himself and the world, far away in the south of China, in an inconspicuous small city, after leader Zhang discussed the plan with everyone, the people from the 6 major factions got up to say goodbye, and only the high-level members of the Ming cult were left in the originally exquisite hall. Leader, you shouldn't have agreed to young hero Liang before. This subordinate understands that the leader is thinking for the sake of righteousness and the people of the world, but if we send troops to the Central Plains now, we will directly face the Mongol army head-on. If we start a full-scale war, our Ming cult does not have the strength for that yet. Zhu Yuanzhang stood up at this time, wearing a short flat head, and reported to Zhang Wuji with a bitter face, then let's not touch the places where the Mongol army is gathered and stationed first, and start with the areas where they have fewer people, especially those grain-producing areas, and before, in front of the 6 major factions. I have already promised Brother Liang's request. As the leader of a sect, I cannot go back on my word. Zhang Wuji was now carrying his hands behind his back, and his eyes were flashing with wisps of light. Then if we must send troops north, This subordinate suggests that we must occupy Dadu City as soon as possible. In the past half-month, the hundreds of thousands of troops there have been almost completely cleared by young hero Liang at this time. The area around Dadu is in a state of military shortage. The morale of the remaining Yuan Mongol army must also be greatly hit, and if we take Dadu down first, it will be a deterrent to the Yuan army in various places, which can their morale. And second, we do need a lot of gold and silver treasures now. After listening to Zhang Wuji's words, Zhu Yuan's Heng did not object this time, but immediately began to offer advice. That's right, Dadu City does need to be taken down as soon as possible. The brothers of the Five Elements flag need time to adjust and gather. Zhu Yuan's Heng, I will leave this matter to you. The subordinate obeys. In addition, since we are going to relieve the people, we will definitely need a lot of food. Yang left envoy, you take some brothers to Jiangnan and try to raise as much food as possible. The others rest early. We will set off tomorrow to Dadu. Yes. Chapter 263 Advance to the innate level. Ling detected that the host's four-dimensional body values have reached over 300, meeting the conditions to activate the system's third-level permissions. Host, do you need to upgrade the system permissions immediately? In a daze, not knowing how long had passed, Liang Yue just sat there, silently circulating the Zixa true key within his body. His mental power was completely restrained, constantly intertwined and fused with his surging true key. At a certain moment, when the true key within his body reached a certain limit, a purple glow suddenly came from beyond the sky, converging with Liang Yue in the stone chamber. Suddenly, he seemed to be immersed in a kind of unprecedented feeling of joy. It was a feeling of freedom and ease, ethereal and elusive, as if his whole person was being guided and about to ascend. Liang Yue's mental power was greatly extended at this moment, breaking through his own shackles, constantly spreading to the surroundings, and fusing with his own will, merging with nature, connecting with the earth, accompanied by vegetation, surrounded by wind and clouds in the air. Little by little, bright light was surging towards him from all directions, quickly merging into his body, merging into his cells and blood, merging into his muscles and bones, even merging into the Zixa true key that was rapidly circulating throughout his body. At that moment, Liang Yue only felt that his whole person was sublimating, being transformed by nature. His body was rapidly charging and becoming stronger. His mental power was undergoing a rapid qualitative change. With a wonderful perspective, he harmonized and unified with everything around him: the thickness of the earth, the vitality of plants, the agility of animals. All of this seemed to be becoming nourishment and an example for him to move forward. If Liang Yue's mental power was only limited to his inner world in the past, merely expressing his personal emotions and moods, then now he can constantly enrich his perception and cognition by constantly understanding nature, feeling the microscopic state of the surrounding environment, and paying attention to things he would never have noticed before, thereby constantly deriving new spiritual cognitions and states. A small insect eating leaves. All these natural things seem to have become a source of inspiration for him to understand life and his own spirit. Listening carefully, observing slowly, each of them seems to be an incredible power and principle. Liang Yue didn't know how long he had been in this state. He just silently observed, silently understood, and discovered everything around him, enjoying it and immersing himself in it. During this period, day and night alternated, stars and the sun shone together. Everything was so full of life and regularity until a certain moment, the system's prompt suddenly descended from the depths of his soul, which abruptly woke him up from this state. Third-level system permissions. Is it so fast? Only 300 points for the four-dimensional attributes. Slowly, Liang Yue opened his eyes, and the original wonderful state in his mind began to fade quickly. His whole person's will became clear at this moment. In an instant, probably only in the moment when he opened his eyelids, Liang Yue suddenly felt that the world in his vision had become different. The sky was bright, and the sounds of nature were like songs. The atmosphere, which should have been empty, seemed to have become no longer so pure at this time, and the content was so rich. Looking closely, it seemed that there were various color mixed in, some dim, some gloomy, and some surging to the point of blooming with light. Little by little, piece by piece, they formed the wonderful air system in front of him. Large clouds and wind stirred in it, rising and falling, sometimes with gales roaring, sometimes gentle and soft, but they could always be controlled within a unique range of laws. Looking at it, one couldn't help but want to continue to delve into it and find out. In comparison, the range of hearing around Liang Yue's ears did not expand or extend much, and it was still the same as before, but in terms of the accuracy within the hearing range, he had improved more than 100 times. At this time, Liang Yue could even detect the sounds of all insects slowly crawling, flying, and even spiders weaving webs within 30 meters. Little by little, piece by piece, The sound waves rippled out, as if forming a large net covering the entire area under the reflection of this sound wave. Even insects as small as bugs could hardly escape his capture. As for why only within a range of 50 meters, because this is the limit of Liang Yue's current mental power coverage. Beyond that, there is still some spare power, but the control ability is slightly lacking beyond this range. Although he can still hear more rich sounds, Liang Yue can't clearly distinguish which kind of insect the sound is coming from just by relying on his hearing. But the more this is the case, a sense of strangeness and curiosity begins to emerge from the bottom of his heart, making him can't help but become curious about this world. Liang Yue identity, late acquired master inner force. 58,000 magic power. 19,971 strength. 301 agility. 386 constitution. 357 energy. 593 bloodline, human, sealed. It seems that the strength aspect is a little bit behind. That is to say, most of my cultivation in recent times has been biased towards skills. This is indeed a problem. In addition, although I have become an acquired master, the total amount of inner force has not increased too much, which is slightly different from my original idea. Saying that, Liang Yue immediately spread out his palm, and with a thought, several purple clouds immediately emerged from his palm, sometimes rising and falling, sometimes circling and blooming. The posture is beautiful, reflecting the crystal clear brilliance in the sun, as if it has spirituality. Although the increase in the total amount of true ki is not as much as imagined, it is essentially different from the previous acquired true ki at this time. The power of Zixa True Ki has increased by at least nearly 3 times, right? Thinking of this, Liang Yue suddenly pointed his 2 fingers like a sword, and the Zixa True Ki in his palm immediately followed his heart, instantly forming a true ki blade about a foot long at his fingertips. He gently waved it at the stone cube in front of him. In the blink of an eye, accompanied by a rubbing sound as if metal was connected, a deep mark suddenly appeared on the ground, like an arm's command. Excellent toughness. This is the highest realm of Zixa True Ki. Right, next, I should cultivate the innate skill. Wait a moment, before I seem to system upgrade permissions now. Ling. The command has been confirmed. This permission upgrade process is expected to last 3 minutes. Please wait patiently. Host, while you give birth. After speaking, Liang Yue subconsciously summoned the system clock to take a look. He found that at this time, the time since he ate that spiritual potato had passed a whole week. Time is really like water, passing without practice. This unknowingly, but it's only been a week, which is much faster than the half a year that the old eunuch said before. That's right. He's not me after all. It seems that when cultivating this thing, it's best to try not to measure others by oneself. With a wave of his sleeve, a secret book immediately appeared in Liang Yue's palm, but this was not the innate skill that was in the same line as the Zixa divine skill, but another light skill like Masterpiece Swift Meteor. The reason for this decision is that, first of all, a powerful body skill-like technique has a great role in promoting the improvement of a warrior's combat effectiveness. Now that Liang Yue has successfully advanced to the acquired realm, then the enemies he will face in the future will definitely not be too weak. Taking advantage of the remaining experience time in the current Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber world, working hard to improve his combat effectiveness is naturally his top priority now. Furthermore, at this moment, Liang Yue still has a kind of extravagance in his heart. That is, after the system permissions are upgraded, he seems to get a chance for an unlimited level lottery. At this time, the time since the last time he got this type of lottery is not far away, and what he got that time was Great Hammer Fist. This unique ancient martial arts boxing technique has a great effect on improving one's own strength. Then, if this time he happens to be able to draw a technique, if he can go straight to the high martial arts, or even the immortal chivalry level, in this case, then okay, this is indeed a kind of extravagance, but at least there is still hope to achieve it. Moreover, in addition to the unlimited level lottery opportunity in a while, after this experience is completed with merit, he seems to be able to get a random technique gift box. At that time, a new technique will inevitably appear, and the level of that random technique should not be lower than his current realm. In this way, Liang Yue seems to have more room for choice. So, under the entanglement of these factors, he made a happy decision. Wait and see first. After returning to the real world, discuss the follow-up main cultivation technique. In the remaining time in the current Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber world, improve combat power first. In short, this Swift Meteor should be my focus next. Then, there's 9 Yin Bone Claw, soul transferring technique. Then come a better hidden weapon skill. Nameless Sword Manual Sword On has to continue to practice. There is also the complete version of Golden Bell cover. Since this thing has already started before, then it must have a beginning and an end. Her manipulation can't be put down either. After entering the acquired realm, I seem to be able to attach inner force to my hair, so that the hair can be used in actual combat. Thinking about it this way, there are still a lot of things to do next. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 264 Elemental Mystery. Link. This system's permissions have been upgraded. Details are listed in the system panel. Please check them yourself. Host, really? Then, let's do the lottery first. Let's draw the prize before anything else. After hearing the system's notification, Liang Yue's pretense of being a master carefully studying secret manuals instantly vanished. He closed the book in his hand and immediately summoned the system panel. After scrolling up and down a few times, he found the unlimited level lottery and couldn't wait to start it. The system didn't waste any words and directly presented the lottery wheel in front of him. Liang Yue's eyes flashed upon seeing this, but after scanning the wheel in front of him, he still gained nothing. It seems that even below the innate realm, it's impossible to find any secrets from this thing. Ding. Congratulations, host, for drawing the passive skill Elemental Enlightenment. This skill comes from the DNF game world and is the ultimate enlightenment gained after an elemental mage's second awakening into an elemental saint. After being modified by the system, this skill can passively increase the power of elemental magic, enhance the host's affinity to elemental forces, and improve the efficiency of using elemental magic. It can also, to a certain extent, promote the beneficial mutation of elemental magic. Watching the lottery wheel disappear and the skill icon appear, Liang Yue subconsciously bit his lip, feeling speechless. It's not that the skill is bad, it's very good, it's just that it's a bit different from what he had expected. What he wanted now was a cultivation method, preferably a high-level one. Instead, he got a skill, and a magical one at that. However, the system clearly didn't care about Liang Yue's thoughts at this moment. The icon of the Elemental Enlightenment skill instantly transformed into a stream of light, flashing and disappearing into his mind in an instant. A massive torrent of knowledge surged in, pouring in from nowhere, clogging Liang Yue's entire brain into mush. In just a few breaths, Liang Yue, without any resistance, clutched his temples and slammed his head into a rock. He groaned incessantly. This state lasted for the better part of the day for Liang Yue. The outside world's sky gradually changed from a clear morning sunrise to a dark, cloud-filled night when the flow of knowledge in his mind stopped and was completely received. Even with Liang Yue's current physical condition, he was severely affected. He was almost exhausted, his limbs weak, his whole body soaked in sweat, and his face showed a look of being worse than dead. He lay on the ground like a corpse for a long time, unwilling to get up. This is too something. This skill, although powerful, it's not very useful to me for the time being. Right. Speaking of which, the magic skills I have are bouncing shot, but that's a bit like arcane, not elemental. Magic show is more reliable and divided into different elemental attributes, but I've hardly ever used it before. It seems that I have to put more effort in this direction in the future, otherwise, I'll be sorry for the suffering I've endured today. Elemental Enlightenment skill level 15. Current level 1 from the Elemental Mage's profound understanding and summary of elemental rules, a necessary ability for the Elemental Saint skill effect. All skill attack power plus 20%, elemental skill attack power plus 20%, release speed plus 15%, advance elemental affinity, elemental mutation skill proficiency. 1000. Liang Yue was naturally not a fool. With such a high-end introduction on the skill panel, plus such an awesome effect in the initial state, he certainly understood what it meant, but the problem is that he himself doesn't have many elemental magic skills. Right now magic show counts as one, but this skill is actually a combat-type magic, and it's a semi-passive one. After being modified by the system, he only needs to activate the skill with his mind. Then, during combat, Liang Yue can automatically generate magic orbs behind him every few seconds while continuously attacking the enemy. The generation speed varies depending on the energy activity in different regions. These magic orbs have a quantity limit, and they will dissipate on their own if not used for a period of time. It can be said that, except for activating and launching them, which requires him to use his brain, he hardly needs to worry about anything during the entire skill execution process. According to the skill's introduction, the magic orbs formed by the skill in its initial state are of a non-attribute magic element. Each time a non-attribute orb attacks an enemy, it will increase Liang Yue's movement speed by a certain amount. After level 10, The orbs that automatically gather will slowly differentiate into light, dark, ice, and fire attributes after level 30. It is said that even more elemental types will be developed on top of the original 4 attributes. Each different attribute orb will provide Liang Yue with different attribute buffs after attacking the enemy. Moreover, these orbs are divided into small, medium, and large sizes, with larger sizes having higher attack power. The higher the skill level, the greater the chance of generating large orbs. Furthermore, the level cap of the magic show skill is a full 50 levels. Without a doubt, this is a skill with both potential and depth, and it is worth Liang Yue's great development. However, he had almost always ignored it before. The reason is, I don't need it. I don't need it at all. I can clearly kill an entire group of enemies with one sword, cleanly and neatly, splitting them in half or something. Why would I need to add a magic orb? Besides, I didn't have magic power before, so I couldn't activate this skill even if I wanted to, but now it's good. With magic power, the magic show and elemental enlightenment together are indeed worth my attention. However, orbs don't actually need too much attention because they can gather automatically, and launching them only requires mental control. Moreover, the operability of orbs is not very high. If I really want to further develop the potential of elemental enlightenment, I might need something else. Zunming Palm? Flame Blade? Or Nine Heavens Thunderclap Scripture? Speaking of which, although these 3 kung fu techniques are initially powered by martial arts true energy, if magic principles are added after they are formed, the power should be increased. Right, now that I have elemental enlightenment in hand, it doesn't seem difficult to achieve this effect. Thinking of this, Liang Yue raised an eyebrow and, with a flick of his sleeve, took out the secret manuals of these 3 ultimate techniques from his storage space. Time passed, and an hour quickly went by. At this time, it had already begun to drizzle outside. After carefully weighing the options for a while, Liang Yue finally decided to practice the flame blade. In fact, what Liang Yue wanted to practice most was the Dragon Tiger Mountain's 9 Heavens Thunderclap Scripture. However, the drawback of this cultivation method is that it is too profound. Moreover, although they both belong to the Taoist lineage, its attributes are somewhat incompatible with the Purple Mist Divine Art. Liang Yue has now advanced to the ranks of innate masters, so it is naturally impossible for him to abandon his hard-earned Purple Mist true energy and switch to practicing the 9 Heavens Thunderclap Scripture. As for the Zunming Palm, although it is not as profound as the former, it is also an ultimate technique inheritance that combines both internal and external cultivation, forming a system of its own. Therefore, the reason for not practicing it is the same as for the 9 Heavens Thunderclap Scripture. Only the Flame Blade, although it is also regarded as one of the divine kung fu techniques in the system's evaluation, it is actually just a pure method of true energy operation. As long as it follows its characteristic true energy route, imitating it, it can be successfully executed. And it does not require specific martial arts internal force to supply it. The drawback of this kung fu technique is that its operating route is relatively complex, requiring the practitioner to have extremely high true energy manipulation ability to be able to control it smoothly. With a slight carelessness, it is easy to injure oneself, causing irreparable hidden dangers. However, this is obviously not a problem for Liang Yue, who has now successfully advanced to the innate realm and has practiced a great universe shift. But in this way, my next arrangements seem to be a bit tight. There's the Golden Bell cover, the Swift Meteor, and the 9 Yin White Bone Claw. And now there's the magic side cultivation to consider. It feels a bit stretched. However, if I can make some reasonable arrangements, it's not impossible. Chapter 265 System Permissions Update. Ziksha Divine Skill Level 1111. Current Level 11 of the 9 skills of Mount Hui. Ziksha is the best skill. Effects: Inner Force plus 15,000 Strength plus 5 Agility plus 8 Constitution plus 10 Energy plus 59 Physical U0026 Magical Defense plus 3,850 Inner Force Recovery Speed plus 1,500 Elemental Resistance plus 50 Additional Damage plus 150% Dissolves Foreign Energy Doubles Key Recovery Speed Heals Internal Injuries. Judging from the values and attributes on the panel, compared to the previous Primordial Chaos skill, Ziksha Divine Skill is undoubtedly much more profound. Even with the attributes of the 2 Inner Force skills overlapping and reinforcing each other, the latter can still grant Liang Yue a large number of attributes and characteristics. This is truly not easy. Moreover, after advancing to the innate realm, although this skill has already been cultivated to its peak, Liang Yue can still continuously strengthen his total amount of true ki by following the meridians according to the Ziksha Divine Skill. Relying on the fundamental difference between innate true ki and acquired inner force, even achieving astonishing growth in a short period, This is a process of filling and perfecting. Although the efficiency is certainly not as fast as directly cultivating an innate level skill, it is already sufficient for Liang Yue at the moment. The system permission upgrade this time involves quite a few changes, but most of them are just minor details. For example, the optimization of the light curtain interface, and even the detailed display of character panel information, etc. Summarizing these, the only points that Liang Yue values most are the following. First, and also the point that Liang Yue believes has the greatest impact on him, that is the interval between trials in the myriad worlds has changed from once a month to once every 3 months, while leaving Liang Yue with a large amount of free time in the real world. It also indirectly provides him with room for strength growth. Time is just one aspect of it. The key is that the monthly lottery opportunity, which was originally consistent with the refresh frequency of the myriad worlds trials, has now been transformed into 3 times. This is definitely a considerable variable for Liang Yue. Second, the time ratio between the real world and the stronghold world has been extended from the original 1:2 to 1:5, originally double the happiness, now it's 5 times away. This change undoubtedly extends his cultivation time and the necessary conditions for strength growth once again. Third, the refresh of the second random dungeon acquisition opportunity. In other words, after returning to the stronghold world, Liang Yue can open up a second dungeon battlefield, enriching the daily strength growth path for himself and senior sister Z and the others. Liang Yue also has high expectations for this in his heart. After all, the previous Grand Forest series of dungeons, apart from having a good energy environment that could be used as an absorption place for the magic core, had almost no effect on himself. Fourth, it is about the improvement of Jinxiang Sensei and the other villagers' attribute panels. Liang Yue didn't pay much attention to the specific changes, however. At a glance, he roughly saw 2 conspicuous points. The first is that villagers can independently comprehend skills. The second is that the original skill sharing quota between Liang Yue, the host, and the villagers like Jinxiang Sensei and the Gaocheng mother and daughter, has now been expanded to 3. Maybe magic, enchant and elemental mysteries can be shared with them. If they can achieve results, then share them back him. They don't seem to have magic power. The above 4 points are the main changes in this system permission update. For Liang Yue, the impact of this is still very significant. At the very least, he no longer has to worry about his appearance, figure, and temperament undergoing a major change every month. Although this is actually a good thing for him, it is not easy to explain to familiar classmates around him. Now it's good. Not only has the trial frequency been extended in disguise, but even the daily time extension has been increased several times. This is equivalent to a certain extent, shifting Liang Yue's focus from the myriad worlds back to reality, or rather, to the mixed world of American comics, mainly Marvel. However, after the innate realm, the time it takes to take each step forward is probably not comparable to the acquired realm. Right, 3 months, extended 5 times is 15 months, about 450 days. But I have to spend most of the day at school, so a small half of that time will be lost in vain. But this is not a big deal. Just arrange it reasonably. Thinking of this, Liang Yue couldn't help but shake his head, temporarily putting aside his distracting thoughts, no longer worrying about these things, and instead continued to concentrate on reading the Swift Meteor manual in his hand. After a period of careful sorting, Liang Yue has now roughly planned the layout of his next cultivation plan. First of all, Swift Meteor is a lightness skill, focusing on speed, burst, close combat footwork, and mid-range flying gliding techniques. Therefore, practicing this skill will not actually affect the progress of his other secret arts, whether it is close quarters combat martial arts like 9 Yin White Bone Claw, or semi-automatic close combat magic like magic enchant. With the cooperation of the two, they complement each other, and can even exert extraordinary wonderful effects. In addition, there seems to be a lot of cooperation between 9 Yin White Bone Claw and magic enchant. Claw attacks, enchantments automatically generated, enchantment attacks, creating opportunities for claw attacks. The situation of Flame Blade is similar to 9 Yin White Bone Claw. Both are offensive methods that can be used in conjunction with enchantments. Similarly, Liang Yue's hair manipulation ability is also like this, only Golden Bell Shield. This divine skill from the Buddhist system can be described as profound and far-reaching, with a high realm. It is a self-contained system that emphasizes both internal and external cultivation. In addition to requiring Liang Yue to specifically set aside time to practice it alone, there are also many differences between its internal force operation method and Zixa True Key. This requires Liang Yue to carefully ponder over it himself. If it really doesn't work, then abandon the original internal cultivation method of Golden Bell Shield and directly use Zixa True Key to activate this divine skill. Anyway, Taoist cultivation methods themselves have considerable health-preserving effects. It shouldn't be much different from the inner force of the Golden Bell Shield. In addition, speaking of modifying skills, I have now advanced to the innate realm, and my own state and realm are unprecedentedly good, and my vision and thinking are not bad. I can probably already modify and create some skills myself. Right, home spending some time, I can always think of a way. Therefore, with this kind of thinking, in the following time, Liang Yue also entered a study and summary of his own martial arts and various divine skill inheritances for a full half-month. This guy almost never left this stone house except for necessary eating, drinking, and excretion. Chasing down Mongolians, rescuing people, etc., were also temporarily thrown to the back of his mind by him. After all, this guy is not an aborigine of this world. Liang Yue can spend a lot of money, or even use the remaining villager quota, to save people who are originally unrelated to him when facing them face to face. But there is also a saying in this world, out of sight, out of mind. Although he knows that the people of northern China in this plain may be facing the Mongols' burning, killing, looting, and ruthless trampling at this moment, as long as these things don't happen in front of his eyes, Liang Yue will feel that his own affairs are actually more important. In addition, the things he agreed with Mount Hui, Kongtong, and Amai are still several months away, so there is no rush for the time being. The key is because Liang Yue's own cultivation speed is too fast, and his physical condition is too good, so good that even Eunuch Lao, that innate expert, probably didn't expect him to completely digest the Zuanmu spirit potato so quickly, based on his experience as a past master. As a result, the major event of breaking through the bottleneck of heaven and man, which was originally estimated to be completed within half a year, has now been solved smoothly by him in just 1 week. This is both a miracle and an abnormality, and in order to make this abnormal thing more reasonable, Liang Yue feels that he seems to need to artificially postpone this time span a bit. Chapter 266, Datu Imperial City. However, in the end, Liang Yue didn't linger in this secluded stone chamber for too long. Once the cultivation of divine skills and unique techniques like Swift Meteor and Flame Blade began to steadily progress, and the Golden Bell Shield also showed promising signs of improvement, he reopened the secret passage leading to the underground treasure vault. Then, following the secret passage, he leisurely made his way back to the Imperial City. During the process, Liang Yue discovered that the large warehouses in the underground treasure vault, which were originally filled with various gold, silver, and jewels, had now been completely emptied apart from the secret chamber at the bottom of the lake where the Zuanmu spirit potatoes grew. The ground was mostly covered with messy footprints. Clearly, Leader Zhang's operation this time should be considered successful. At least Datu City should already be under the control of the Ming cult Kaka. He casually activated the mechanism and slowly emerged from the well passage. The first thing that caught his eye was the dilapidated garden that had long been abandoned. At this time, the once relatively soft soil in this garden had been trampled into hard ground, and the weeds along the roadside had also been cleared away. However, the patch of high-yield crops that Liang Yue had planted here was well taken care of. Looking out, it was a thriving, green, and lush scene, with a circle of fences specially erected around it. At this moment, an old man holding a long spoon, wearing gray cloth clothes, and a broken bamboo hat, was watering these crops with manure. The man's back was very thin and frail, as if a gust of wind could blow him down. His hair was gray and scattered. He was the old eunuch. These crops don't need too much fertilizer, just pay attention to prevent them from being infected with pests. Liang Yue curled his lips at this time, put one hand on the fence wall, looked at the little old man inside, and reminded him, "Congratulations, little friend, on becoming a Xianshan expert. He little friend is truly a gifted person. It's only been half a month, and you have completely stabilized your Xianshan realm. It's much earlier than the half a year that this old man initially estimated." The little old man turned around at this time, tapped his old waist in a pretentious manner, looked him up and down, and then said with a look of admiration, "In fact, as early as 7 days ago, I had already completed the breakthrough to Xianshan. These days have been spent consolidating my cultivation and learning some new skills." "Oh? This old one sees that you don't seem to have started practicing the Xianshan skill. Could it be that little friend has a better choice? Not for the time being, but who knows what will happen in the future. My current focus of cultivation is on those external martial arts moves, so that's how it is. Little friend is doing this, must have your own ideas. Tell me about the situation outside these days, then let's talk as we walk." Saying that, the old eunuch opened the fence door, put the long spoon in his hand aside, and then led Liang Yue out. During this period of time, the situation in the world can be described as turbulent, but in general, it is still beneficial to us. The news that the Mongol imperial family has withdrawn from China and returned to the grasslands has now completely spread in this way. The Yuan Mongol forces all over the country naturally followed suit and their morale plummeted, and they no longer had the intention to continue fighting, and fled north in a hurry. But the people everywhere have become extremely resentful of this group of people. Some scattered Yuan Mongol soldiers and horses have mostly been killed on the road by the people of various places spontaneously, and some local gentry have also taken the opportunity to organize anti-Yuan forces, and it is said that some have already gathered a lot of soldiers and horses. Gentry? HMPH Liang Yue shook his head upon hearing this, with a bit of disdain on his face, but he did not intervene. In addition, most of the larger-scale Mongol troops in the south have also suffered heavy losses. The army has no intention of fighting, and they are being chased by the Ming cult soldiers and the anti-Yuan rebel army, who are killing them and abandoning their armor. As for the north, as little friend expected before, the Mongol soldiers and horses are plundering the people's food and grass at all costs in various places, although some places have also organized rebel armies. But in the end, they are just mantis trying to stop a chariot, and it is difficult to have any chance of winning. What about the people of the Ming cult? The Ming cult, in the north, is now based in Dadu City, constantly eroding in all directions. The Ming cult soldiers and horses in various places have also begun to infiltrate the north in small groups, and have fought with some small local Mongol soldiers, but the effect is not great. In addition, they are now using the batch of gold and silver in the imperial city to recruit soldiers and horses on a large scale, and expand their teams in various places, but they have also purchased a lot of food and grass from the south. It has been transported to Dadu City one after another in the past few days, and now the situation in the city can be considered temporarily stable, fortunately. But these actions of the Ming cult can only be regarded as neither meritorious nor demeritorious. This is the approach of a smart person. Where is that leader Zhang now? He is leading his troops to attack Suzhou City. If he can take it in one fell swoop, it will be good news for the situation in the north. If everything goes well, then this area in the east of China will basically be considered unobstructed Suzhou, northern Jiangsu. That is also a grain-producing area. If it can be taken, it is indeed of great importance, but I thought before that this leader Zhang would be stationed in Dadu City to go to the Central Plains for a trip, and by the way, clean up the Mongol soldiers who are still left there. This old one had long expected that little friend would say this, so in recent days, I have prepared a great gift for little friend. Saying that, the old eunuch jumped lightly, and the whole person suddenly flew onto a roof, and then continued to leap forward. Seeing this, Liang Yue tapped his feet, and in the blink of an eye, he came to the back of the little old man. Looking around, he found that the imperial city in front of him no longer seemed as deserted as before. On each road, there were also several eunuchs and palace maids walking. Their steps were light, their spirits were full, and they all had a few smiles on their faces. It was completely different from the scene when Liang Yue first came to the imperial city last time, when he was so frightened and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Passing through a spacious martial arts field, there were at least hundreds of people practicing martial arts, and various shots could be heard endlessly, men and women mixed together. There were also many people watching around, which seemed very lively. This is all brought to them by little friend. Originally, after that group of Yuan Mongol nobles fled, they had lost hope, and all that was left was fear and anxiety all day long, fearing that the next new master who came would directly slaughter them. But since little friend's words, they now have something to look forward to. The Jiang, who is a bit strange to his people, but it is always better than staying in the palace. After all, the world outside is more free. Saying that, accompanied by a gust of breeze, the old eunuch brought Liang Yue to the outside of a strange small courtyard, pushed the door and entered, and the old man kept chattering that Zhang Wuji leader is a trustworthy person, although I don't know how little friend reached an agreement with him. But after arriving in Dadu City, in addition to taking away the batch of gold and silver in the treasure vault, he has not committed any offense to other places in the imperial city, and he has already promised us half of that Mount Zhongnan, which is enough, and after taking the gold and silver he ordered the imperial city to be temporarily sealed off, and the people of the Ming cult would send a lot of meat and vegetables every day, and some eunuchs and palace maids who wanted to go out did not shy away, but it was difficult for people outside to come in. If you want to achieve great things, it is indeed necessary to be trustworthy. The little old man did not answer after hearing Liang Yue's words. After laughing twice, he took out a stack of silk cloth from a drawer, spread it out on the table, and saw a strange map densely drawn on it. Little friend, please see, this is a map of the Mongolians' garrison in the north, and records the location of their secret guard strongholds, which was carefully hand-drawn by the people below the other day. Chapter 267 Flame Knife. After obtaining the map from the old eunuch, Liang Yue didn't linger in the capital city. He didn't even pay a visit to Grandmaster Zhang Sanfeng, who was also stationed in the capital, before embarking on his journey. Heading west at full speed. During the journey, Liang Yue transformed into a shooting star, his body enveloped in a purple glow, dragging a long tail of light behind him, exceptionally radiant, traversing the sky. Each rise and fall covered at least 100 meters as far as the eye could see. Hills and trees blurred beneath his feet. In a few breaths, he would sprint from one end of a mountain to the other, like riding a jet plane. This was the marvel of the divine skill, swift meteor, inheriting the characteristic of lightness. Based martial arts in this world that excelled in flight, coupled with the light as a feather trait Liang Yue gained from studying stepping across the river on a reed. Lightness skill effect multiplied by 2, balance multiplied by 2, internal energy consumption reduced by 1/3. On this foundation, combined with his physical attributes that far surpassed ordinary people with a stomp of the accelerator, Liang Yue felt as if he could truly fly, if it weren't for the fact that Swift Meteor, being newly practiced, consumed quite a bit of internal energy, often costing 3,000 points or more upon activation, and it wasn't suitable for long distance travel or sustained aerial maneuvers. Liang Yue felt that flying might not be just a dream for him anymore. As it was, to best suit his travel needs, he could only rely on the rapid internal energy recovery of the purple cloud divine art to maintain his long-term cruising. On his journey, Liang Yue watched the scenery blur beneath him, and with a thought, his mind connected to his stronghold world. After a brief search, he easily found little King Kong, curled up in a ball, sleeping on teacher Shizuka's chest. With a wave of his sleeve, the little guy instantly appeared in his chest pocket. Squeak squeak. The sudden change in environment naturally caught little King Kong's attention, but after smelling the familiar scent of Liang Yue, the little guy quickly reacted. He burrowed out of his collar, looked around at the surroundings, and scratched his head with his little paws. Little King Kong, why do you have a collar around your neck? And a white, eerie bell? Is it made of bone? Squeak squeak. It's actually made of dragon bone. Squeak squeak squeak. Oh, it's a talisman. Equipment. No wonder. Let me think. A talisman from the forager world seems like it can increase item quantity gained by 75%, right? Awesome. Squeak contracted war beast. Little King Kong from a behemoth war beast clan in Zhang Sanfeng's interdimensional travel world bloodline. Behemoth war beast level 20 height. 2.33 meters stage. Early growth stage talents: tenacious life, intelligence, mimicry, strength, agility, paralytic venom, combat instinct, size manipulation, armor break. Combat skills: scratch, bite, armor break. Seeing this, Liang Yue raised his eyebrows and picked up one of little King Kong's paws to examine it. Upon closer inspection, he noticed that the originally black claws seemed to have a few more streaks of dark golden luster. After level 20, the claws start to undergo qualitative change. Thinking of this, Liang Yue couldn't help but shake his head in amazement. Just imagine, on the battlefield, a behemoth beast constantly waving its long claws, relying on strength and speed, wherever it went. Neither man nor armor could withstand it. Now that it has the armor break attribute, one swipe would truly make the enemy as insignificant as grass, only to be crushed and torn to pieces. Just thinking about this scene is terrifying. Moreover, isn't that just a copy of himself? Without a doubt, with the addition of little King Kong, a powerful war force, Liang Yue was definitely bringing double the joy to the enemy. Soon, relying on his current travel mode, in about half a day, he had already traveled far. After a while, Liang Yue discovered a long marching column on a forest road. A glance revealed that there weren't many Mongol soldiers in this team, only about 1,000. Mostly riding horses and wielding sabers. The majority were actually Central Plains women who had been plundered by these men. At this moment, they were being flanked by Mongol soldiers on both sides, walking forward at a leisurely pace. Also, at the rear of the column, a group of miserably treated young and middle-aged men, their clothes torn, covered in scabs, tied with ropes, were being driven to push and pull a team of grain carts. From time to time, someone would fall to the ground, either due to exhaustion, severe injuries, or simply because they tripped over the ropes at their feet. Mongol soldiers were whipping them forward. Liang Yue stood on a tall treetop beside the road, narrowed his eyes as he watched the scene below. Little King Kong in his pocket seemed to sense the fluctuations in his heart and suddenly jumped out of his clothes, climbing onto his shoulder. Kill those wearing leather armor and those with whips. Be careful not to accidentally injure the civilian. Squeak squeak. After a brief exchange, the man and the monkey leaped down from the tree. Roar. The moment he landed from the air, little King Kong had already completed his transformation, From a small being of less than a foot long, he suddenly transformed into a large ape 2 meters tall. Muscles swelled all over his body, claws sharp. Instantly, he gave the Yuan Mongol soldiers and the civilians being escorted a big scare. And they retreated in panic, screaming. Some with weak legs even fell directly to the ground amidst the long neighs of horses and earth-shattering shouts. Little King Kong had already transformed into an agile killing machine. He hunched his back, his fur bristling, his claws like knives, and with a stomp of his legs, he darted out. His speed was as fast as lightning, and he violently tore at the Mongol soldiers. His movements were expansive and powerful, yet extremely agile and swift. Each step he took seemed to be a bounce. Every movement was full of power. Wherever he went, people, horses, and armor were all shattered with one blow. Flesh and bones flying in all directions, he kept making terrifying low roars. A strong smell of blood began to permeate the surroundings. In just a moment, little King Kong had already followed a forest road in front of him, killing towards the distance. On Liang Yue's side, he was no longer the reckless young man who wielded two long swords and blindly slashed in the crowd with speed and brute force. After formulating a cultivation plan, Liang Yue began to pay attention to technique. His 5 fingers formed claws, shaped like hooks, and between his fingers and palms, there was a layer of purple shell as if cast. That was the product of the purple cloud true ki, reaching the innate level and merging with the power of nature, sharpness and toughness coexisting, complementing the 9 yin divine claw perfectly. With the two combined, the power could almost be said to be indestructible, not much weaker than sword energy. With a wave, streaks of purple quickly roamed through the crowd, each move aimed at the vital points of the Mongol soldiers. Wherever he went, the same bones were broken, tendons were severed, and flesh flew. At the same time, Liang Yue was holding a burning blade in his other hand. The blade was more than a meter long, its shape erratic, and it was entwined with flames from time to time. Clusters of flames would rise from it, as if someone was constantly adding fuel to it, illuminating the surroundings in a fiery red. The handle of the flame saber and Liang Yue's palm were connected by a deep purple glow. With just a slight wave, the blade would undergo deformation, turning into a raging flame whip. Its power was okay, but it was very difficult to control. Several times, he almost accidentally injured the civilians in the crowd. If it weren't for his quick reaction, he would have become a villain. This was the flame saber, a secret art from Tibetan Tantrism according to the records in the secret manual. After the flame saber was launched, it should have directly transformed into a blade for mid-range attacks. But he had tinkered with it like this. Firstly, because Liang Yue's cultivation of this flame saber divine skill had only just begun, and his mastery was not yet proficient. Secondly, it was because his mastery of the elemental mystery skill was also not proficient at its root. Liang Yue could not add enough fire elemental power to the blade at the moment the flame saber was formed and launched. In fact, the flame saber, purely driven by innate level martial arts true ki, was still good in terms of power, but in order to cooperate with the power of the elements he had to castrate the flame saber to a certain extent, and finally improve it into the appearance it needed to be held in his hand. With the two mixed together, the power was only barely satisfactory, and a single slash could not even kill a person. It could only leave a scorched scar on the Mongol soldiers, or ignite a piece of clothing. But this was also inevitable. After all, Liang Yue's purpose in practicing the flame saber was to train his control over the elemental mystery skill. Otherwise, why would he practice such a flashy and impractical skill? Moreover, Liang Yue naturally understood the principle that a tall building rises from the ground. Chapter 268 Ugu Sword Tomb. Furthermore, Liang Yue's attack methods were clearly not limited to what he had shown, the key being that he had too many things to practice now. At this moment, the flame blade in his hand, while not immediately capable of killing the surrounding Yuan Mongol soldiers, seemed to condemn those people to an even more miserable fate, because awaiting them was Liang Yue's hair attack, instantly launched with the enhancement of his Xianqian level Purple Dawn True Ki. Due to the limitations of his ability level, he didn't dare to play too wildly. Instead, he obediently gathered several hundred strands of hair, weaving them into a slender hair spear, and fiercely thrust and stabbed at the surrounding Yuan Mongol soldiers with flashes of purple light. He could instantly pierce a series of holes in their faces and skulls, and he was currently controlling a full 12 of these hair spears. In an instant, Liang Yue seemed to transform into a spider demon. Wherever he went, large numbers of Mongol soldiers immediately cried out in terror, seemingly losing all courage to resist. And so, with 12 long spears constantly piercing and thrusting from his back, Cheng Cheng Cheng, the flame blade in his left hand slashed and hacked away relentlessly, Shua shua shua, while the 9-yin white bone claw in his right hand could deliver the finishing blow in close combat. It could be said that wherever Liang Yue went, that place transformed into a scene of carnage, and that group of Yuan Mongol soldiers was like a flock of lambs trapped in a pit of blood and fire. No matter how they struggled, screamed, or begged for mercy, in the end, they couldn't escape the fate of being wiped out. However, despite Liang Yue's operations appearing fierce as a tiger, in terms of actual combat power, he was actually far inferior to one who wielded dual swords. At least, in terms of killing efficiency, this was certainly the case. In no more than 5 minutes, the Yuan Mongol soldiers on the entire road had been reduced to a pile of corpses, with blood and severed limbs covering the ground. A group of civilians were huddled on the ground, trembling, occasionally glancing at Liang Yue and a large tree by the roadside with worry. And on the treetop, little Vajra had now transformed back into tiny bean-sized form, his large eyes filled with confusion and bewilderment as he looked at himself clearly. Due to practicing new moves and techniques, Liang Yue's efficiency in killing enemies had now fallen far behind this little guy. "Thank you, great immortal, for the grace of saving our lives," a middle-aged man, who seemed to be very prestigious among the surrounding people, straightened his clothes at this time, and then came to Liang Yue. Tremblingly he bowed deeply to him, saying with a hint of apprehension in his voice, "I am not some great immortal, nor am I some demon or monster. I am just a martial artist who has cultivated special techniques. This monkey is a natural mutant, however, but it has long since understood human nature and will not hurt people casually. You don't need to be afraid." Upon hearing this, Liang Yue also offered a few words of explanation, but he felt a bit strange inside, because the way he fought now didn't seem like a normal person at all. The middle-aged man clearly breathed a sigh of relief after hearing his words, and the many civilians behind him also slowly began to relax. However, before long, the crowd began to emit sobs of weeping, which gradually merged into chorus. "Alice. Even so, we still have to thank you, great hero, for your help." Hearing this, the middle-aged man also revealed a face full of sorrow, and then bowed deeply to Liang Yue again. "All right, there's no need for these formalities anymore. The most important thing now is to quickly treat the wounds on your bodies, and then pick up the weapons on the ground, as well as the Mongolians' armor, and protect the women in the group to return home." As he spoke, Liang Yue raised his hand and pointed, continuing, "Aren't there some horses over there? Take those supplies with you on the road. It should be enough for you to consume." "Thank you, great hero, no need. By the way, where are you people from?" "We are people from Bing Province." "Bing Province? Taiwan. Are there still Mongolian soldiers there?" "Yes. And the number is at least tens of thousands. They have already plundered countless supplies, gold, silver, and manpower. Our group is actually just the vanguard." "Alright, you guys organize yourselves in a bit and slowly return to Bing Province. If you feel it's too dangerous, head in the direction of Dadu. The Mongolians there have already retreated. They won't dare to go there again in the short term. I'm going to head to Taiwan now." Upon hearing this, the middle-aged man's face suddenly changed greatly, and after glancing around a few times, he hurriedly said, "Great hero, why take such a risk? Why not travel with us?" When the time comes before the other party could finish speaking, Liang Yue immediately waved his hand, too lazy to pay attention to his little thoughts, and placed little Vajra into his chest with a leap. His entire body was enveloped in purple light, transforming into a shooting star, and disappearing above the dense forest in the blink of an eye. In the following time, Liang Yue began a long and extensive journey of conquest according to the Mongol military formations and secret guard distribution map provided by the old eunuch. Liang Yue traveled south after leaving Taiwan. First he went to Luoyang City, then took a detour to Kaifeng, and then went to Zhejiang and Nanyang, followed by Chang'an, Shenyang, Hanzhong, and then circled around to Zhangyang City. After clearing out the remnants of the Yuan Mongol soldiers in the city and surrounding areas, Liang Yue specifically took 2 days, using the spherical camera as a means. After a careful search, he finally found traces of the Pasakwa snake in a hidden valley outside Zhangyang City. He wiped out their snake nest in one fell swoop, sending them all into the base world, and then, in a nearby precipitous rocky cliff, he found a stone tablet. The inscription on the tablet read, "Having roamed the Jianghu for more than 30 years, slaying all my enemies, sword demon Dugu Kilbei, being invincible under heaven, buries his sword here. Alice, the heroes are helpless, and the long sword is futile, a sorrow beyond compare." After reading this rather pretentious passage, although Liang Yue himself didn't quite agree with it, It was indeed good news for him. After some rummaging, this fellow successfully found a treasured sword from the mound in front of the stone tablet, which had withstood the test of time and bacteria, yet was still gleaming with a cold, sharp light. Needless to say, this sword must be the fierce weapon that Dugu Kyobe wielded in his youth to compete with the heroes of Hebei. The sword body weighed just under 10 pounds, and the shape was good. At least, in Liang Yue's opinion, it did look like a treasured sword, but it felt a bit light and not heavy enough in his hands. So after playing with it a few times, this fellow threw it into the library in the base world. Immediately afterwards, Liang Yue went all the way up the cliff and found Dugu Kyobe's tomb on the top of the cliff in no time. After some investigation, the secrets of the Dugu 9 swords were obtained. After that, he didn't stay in Jiangyang City any longer, took out the map given by the old eunuch and glanced at it a few times, and then hurried on his way again thereafter. For about 2 months, Liang Yue was constantly traveling across the northern land of China wherever he went. He would surely kill the Mongolians until their corpses littered the fields, leaving no armor intact. 2 months later, after there were few Yuan Mongol soldiers of significant scale left within China, he suddenly disappeared from the Jianghu for a time. His whereabouts became a mystery. Chapter 269 Mutated Peach. Mutated Ponto, peach, a spiritual grade species evolved from an ordinary peach tree after 1,000 years of growth. It contains a relatively large amount of wood-based spiritual energy. Peach wood can dispel evil, peach resin can nourish people, replenish deficiencies, and peach fruit can lighten the body, increase lifespan, and regulate injuries. Eating one fruit will allow you to go without food for 3 months. This spiritual plant likes light and fertilizer, and can be transplanted. This is the ponto tree that some book fans and netizens are talking about. It feels like these peaches are slightly inferior to the mysterious wood spirit sweet potatoes, but they are obviously a level higher than the earth spirit milk. In any case, this is a rare elixir. I'll take it all away later. About half a month later, Liang Yue, with the help of this Lianhuan Manor's location and the assistance of the spherical video recorder, found the secret valley in the Kunlun Mountains. The entire search process was not difficult. Although the location of this secret valley was hidden, as long as it was open air, no matter how isolated it was from the world, it would still be clear at a glance from an aerial view. In fact, Liang Yue spent more time searching for this Lianhuan Manor and interrogating the YI with Macron NZH inheritance than searching for this valley. The valley where Liang Yue is currently located is actually inside an ancient, extinct volcano surrounded by high mountain walls. The melted snow from the mountain peaks provides abundant water, which eventually gathers into a lake. Strange-looking cold water fish are swimming in the water here, flowers are blooming, various exotic flowers, herbs, and even medicinal materials grow everywhere. In addition, a group of monkeys live in the valley reflected by the azure sky. Everything looks beautiful. Of course, the root of all this is directly related to the thick, tall, and graceful peach tree in the center of the valley. It is precisely because of this spiritual grade, ponto, tree, constantly breathing in and out the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and creating the energy environment in this valley, that the scene of medicinal materials growing everywhere has come about. Squeak, squeak squeak, squeak squeak, squeak, squeak roar. The arrival of this stranger, Liang Yue, had naturally already attracted the attention of the monkeys in the valley. Although the strength of the two sides is very different, behemoths and monkeys are still in the same species after all, so communication should not be a problem. Sure enough, after a while, little King Kong seemed to have convinced the monkey group, and then slowly walked over, leading a large white ape. This ape is about 2 meters tall, with white fur all over its body, but it looks very weak, and limps as it walks above its abdomen. There is also an obvious scar, and with every movement, traces of thick pus flow out from it. Seeing this appearance, Liang Yue was immediately relieved, knowing that he had definitely not come to the wrong place. Squeak, I see, its injury is indeed a bit serious. It must have been delayed for a long time to become like this. After bringing the big white ape over, little King Kong raised a paw, pointed to the abnormally swollen wound on the white ape's abdomen, and asked him to think of a way. After Liang Yue pretended to study it for a while, he gestured to the white ape, signaling it to lie on the ground. Who knew that although this guy understood human nature, its intelligence was not very high. After gesturing for a long time, it finally understood, and lay diagonally on a large rock next to it. With some trepidation, Liang Yue then held little King Kong and approached its wound, and then picked up one of the little guy's claws and gently swiped it across the white ape's wound. Immediately, the wound, which had originally healed somewhat messily, was cut open by the sharp claw hook. At the same time, under the effect of the paralyzing toxin, The white ape's entire body instantly froze there, and it became completely unaware of everything. Liang Yue then casually threw little King Kong aside, wrapped a thin layer of purple haze true key around his 5 fingers, and reached into the wound without much effort. He took out an oil paper package from the white ape's stomach. Opening it, inside was the secret manual of the Jiang Shenguang 9 Yang divine skill. Finally got it, but there's nothing to look forward to. At most, it will just be used as miscellaneous books for reference. Having already advanced to the innate realm, he naturally had no desire to cultivate this divine skill, because after the purple haze divine skill is cultivated to a great success, its own key recovery speed is not weaker than the 9 Yang. The so-called invulnerability to all poisons and the ability to restrain yin cold attribute inner power are also not something to show off in front of high-quality purple haze true key. Its only use is probably like the Jin's Hong's Heo, golden bell cover divine skill, to be modified and then integrated into its own cultivation system. After casually flipping through the secret manual a few times, Liang Yue casually put it into his storage space, and then began to treat the wound of the white ape in front of him. True key turned into a knife, cutting away the rotten flesh, and then he used a strand of hair to sew the wound back and forth. Then he took out a bottle of ancient fruit wine, poured it on the wound, and considered it disinfected. He poured most of the remaining bottle directly into the white ape's mouth. Under the nourishment of this deep blue, translucent liquid, the white ape also began to slowly recover from the stiff state of the previous paralyzing toxin. The body, which was originally weakened by bacterial erosion, also began to slowly become energetic. In addition, with the focus of the disease being removed, I believe that with the white ape's instinct for survival, it should be able to recover quickly. Sure enough, almost as soon as it climbed up from the stone, this guy immediately jumped onto the ponto tree, and then reached out and picked more than a dozen fruits from the branches. It pushed most of them in front of Liang Yue and little King Kong, and kept 3 or 5 for itself, and began to sit on the ground and eat heartily. Looking at the splashing juice and the wood-based spiritual energy constantly overflowing in the air, Liang Yue's eyes twitched involuntarily. Forget it. At worst, I'll take these monkeys into the stronghold world together afterward. Deng deng. Just as Liang Yue was wondering how to dig up this ponto tree, a melodious and short prompt sound suddenly rang in his mind with a thought. He opened the villager platform and saw that the avatar of the girl's Ioja was constantly jumping. She actually took the initiative to send me a video chat invitation. Is the sun rising from the west today? The corners of his mouth curled slightly. Liang Yue then sat down under the tree with little King Kong, who was stuffing peaches into his mouth, took a ponto, and took a bite, and then clicked the video button. In an instant, Xiao Zhao's image appeared on the opposite side. Looking at it, Liang Yue couldn't help but frown in surprise, because the girl's appearance didn't seem very good. Her eyes were swollen like peaches, and there were still tear stains on her face. Obviously she had just cried. And the little girl Yang Bu, who was also sitting silently on the side. You, where are you? Looking at Liang Yue, who was eating peaches over there, Xiao Zhao immediately asked with a pout, her voice carrying a hint of sobbing. I'm in the Kunlun Mountains. What's wrong with you? What are you doing in the Kunlun Mountains? Are you going to Guangming Top? No, I'm looking for opportunities here. What opportunities can there be in those desolate mountains? Well, these peaches in my hand are one of them. Ordinary people can't eat them. As he spoke, Liang Yue took out 2 red ponto from little King Kong's arms, and then sent them to the 2 people on the opposite side through the newly added item transfer function of the villager platform. In fact, this item transfer function was a bit redundant in his opinion, because after the system permission upgrade, the villagers of the stronghold world also followed Liang Yue and obtained a lot of permissions. Among them, there was the ability to connect to the stronghold world and store and retrieve items within a specified range. These 2 abilities, to a certain extent, have actually shown functional overlap in the blink of an eye. 2 large ponto arrived in Xiao Zhao's hands on the opposite side. Seeing this, Yang Bu, who next to her, immediately took one over. Without any politeness, she put it in front of her nose and smelled it, and a look of intoxication immediately appeared on her small face. Then the little girl put the peach into her storage space. What's wrong with you? Your face is all cried into little tabby cat, Liang Yue asked with a smile, looking at Xiao Zhao on the opposite side, but he already had some guesses in his heart. My master, he's going to give me away. Xiao Zhao also put away the peach in her hand at this time, and then said with a sullen face as she spoke, a pair of big eyes were filled with tears again. What's going on? Liang Yue now had a look of surprise on his face, and asked knowingly. Everything was fine at first, but I didn't expect it. Yesterday, 3 Western region people suddenly came from nowhere. They seemed to be the wind, cloud, and moon envoys of the Persian Ming cult General Altar. They Yang Yue, whose little mouth was very quick at this time, and she sorted out the course of events in a moment. It was similar to what Liang Yue had guessed before. After being approached by the wind, cloud, and moon and voice, great cult leader Zhang didn't know what he was thinking at the time. After fighting with the three people, and neither side winning, he actually agreed to hand over Xiao Zhao and asked her to follow the other party back to Persia, and then take over the position of cult leader. What happened after that? Liang Yue continued to ask. Pulling at the corner of his mouth, I borrowed Sister Nanlixiang's penetrator dual guns and turned those three people into sieves. Xiao Zhao took a deep breath at this time, and then looked at Liang Yue and continued, we too, now want to find you. Chapter 270. Sitting south and looking north. After some exchange, Xiao Zhao and Yang Yue finally gave up on their idea of coming to find him, and instead stayed on the southeast coast, heading all the way to the capital city. The reason Liang Yue gave to dissuade them was that he would return to the capital city in at most half a month. The two girls running to Kunlun Mountain now would just be taking a detour, and there might be dangers along the way. After spending some time and effort, Liang Yue sent the peach trees in the valley, along with the monkey, into the stronghold world. Afterward, Liang Yue spent another 3 days traveling north through the Kunlun Mountains, crossing a vast desert in northern Mongolia. He also killed a foreign cavalry of 20,000 people on the way before arriving near Xianshan. Then, he began to inquire all the way, climbing the dangerous Misty Peak immediately afterward. This guy, braving the white snow and frost, manipulated the spherical camera, wandering around for a full week, but he didn't gain anything, seeing the vast white snow, and the wind on the snow mountain blowing more and more urgently. In the end, Liang Yue had no choice but to give up his unrealistic fantasy. Instead, he began to travel east from Xianshan, crossing the entire Mongolian plateau. He walked and killed all the way, all the Mongolian armies, nobles, or various tribes, large and small, that he encountered were burned into scorched earth. All the cattle, sheep, and horses were taken into the stronghold world. Afterward, Liang Yue led a large group of Han Chinese rescued from the heart of the Mongolian clan and began the journey home. Regardless of gender, they were given weapons, armor, and horses, and marched south in such a mighty manner. Wherever they passed, they fed on the enemy. Such a group of people who had just been liberated from cages and chains was very terrifying. Originally, they could only be enslaved and live without hope, and might be tortured to death by a group of prairie people. One day those who were treated better were buried in a pit, and those who were treated worse might become food for wild wolves and vultures. With sufficient meat, dairy products, and various tea products, their bodies, which were not weak in the first place, began to become strong in just 1 week. After all, those with weak bodies had already died on the way from Tothebidi. It didn't matter if they couldn't use weapons. Liang Yue would teach them. It didn't matter if they couldn't ride horses. All those who could ride were formed into a cavalry team, holding knives and shields, and after learning the correct knife-wielding and slashing postures, they could also exert good combat effectiveness. Although the monitoring range of the spherical camera was only 10 kilometers, it could not allow Liang Yue to fully oversee the entire battle situation from God's perspective, but it was enough to prevent enemy attacks in the beginning. When dealing with the Mongolian soldiers' charges and long-range arrow attacks, the team was a little flustered and suffered heavy casualties. Often, Liang Yue had to take action himself to turn danger into safety, but under the threat of death, they had gradually adapted to the rhythm of war and began to make obvious progress. In just 1 week at the very least, when confronting Mongolian soldiers, they were no longer so timid. In addition, with Liang Yue and Little Kong's timely assists, the balance of victory began to tilt towards them. However, casualties were still unavoidable, especially when the Mongolian army discovered that there was such a team composed of slaves in their eyes on their own grasslands. When Liang Yue led the long team behind him to the northern border fortress of the Yuan Mongol, the Mongolian side was already prepared to meet them. In addition to the garrison in the city wall, there were even 2 other armies that surrounded them from the rear on both sides in a flanking attack. However, they obviously underestimated Liang Yue's ability. The border fortress, which was originally built with the help of steep mountains, was actually just a pile of earth and rubble to him. However, in order to better preserve the people behind him, Liang Yue did not choose to rush up and fight head-on, but came to the city of the border town 1 step earlier. Then, he dug a tunnel from the steep mountain next to him about 3 or 4 meters high and 7 or 8 meters wide. It led all the way from one side of the mountain to the other. He consumed a diamond pickaxe enchanted with the efficiency enchantment until it ran out of durability. However, these losses were obviously worth it. In just half a day, the entire team of more than 200,000 people behind him safely passed through the border town and set foot on the land off again. In this process, Liang Yue and Little Kong, 1, constantly after it was over. Liang Yue used rows of stones and explosives to collapse the tunnel in this battle. Liang Yue spent a full half a month from the time he set foot on this grassland until he completely came out. If it was just him alone, even if he went to burn, kill, and plunder again, it would definitely not take so long. Along the way, at least 300,000 Han compatriots were rescued, and about 100,000 were lost during the journey. The vast majority of them died in encounters with the Mongolian army. The other small part was because they were physically weak and could not withstand the suffering of fatigue and fell on the road. From a planning point of view, Liang Yue was just passing through the grassland this time, and most of the time he was walking in a straight line. In this case, he can still rescue a full 300,000 people. Therefore, he has reason to believe that there are definitely more than this number of people who have been looted to the grassland by the one crossing the pass. Liang Yue also looked back deeply in the direction of the border town and secretly decided in his heart that he must come back again before leaving. Time flies, and another month has passed in the blink of an eye. After completing the half-year agreement with her, and summarizing and planning, Liang Yue left the capital city again and went south. However, this time, he was accompanied by two little girls, Xiao Zhao and Yang Bu, who, however, considering the hardship of the long journey and the speed of travel, Liang Yue finally sent the two of them into the stronghold world temporarily. Soon, another 3 days passed. This guy rushed all the way and finally arrived in Dali, Yunnan. After summoning the two women and eating a meal in the somewhat desolate city of Dali in front of him, the three of them inquired all the way and went to Wulian Mountain in the suburbs. That's right. Liang Yue's purpose in coming to Dali this time was naturally to find the incomplete old copy of the according to his own speculation. Duan Yu was very likely to have returned to Wulian Mountain Cave in his later years. When he was feeling nostalgic for his youthful years, he also put back a part of the Northern Darkness divine art that he had learned on his body. Otherwise, where did Ren Wuxing get the remnant copy of the Northern Darkness divine art in the swordsman era and create that from it? Although this was just Liang Yue's guess, he felt that the truth was already close to 10. To be honest, this doesn't have much effect on him, who has already successfully advanced to the innate realm. The internal force gained from absorbing other people's cultivation achievements is of uneven quality. Compared with Liang Yue's innate purple Xia True Qi, it is even more like one in the sky and one on the ground. Moreover, if he simply wants to increase his power, he can directly use the earth spirit milk, or the and other natural treasures. The true Qi converted and increased in this way is not only of good quality, but also grows faster than directly absorbing people's internal force. But there's no way. The system's task requires it is naturally a peerless inheritance, and it can definitely be listed as the top divine skill secret biography in this world. Even if only a part of it is left now, it is equally precious, and maybe he can comprehend something from it. In addition, Liang Yue actually has another extravagant hope in his heart, that is will, which is known as the highest light skill masterpiece of the Jin school of martial arts, also be put back in the cave by Duan Yu. After all, that was also the inheritance he got from the jade statue of his fairy sister. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271 Return. With a flash of light, and after a burst of shifting light and shadows, Liang Yue finally returned to his own stronghold world. Besides himself, the little girl Yang Bu, who had just bid farewell to her father and whose eyes were a little red, was also with him. In comparison, Xiao Zhao, who called herself a maidservant, had already asked Liang Yue to send her into the stronghold world a few days earlier. It seemed that Zhang Dejiaozhu's previous intention to send her away had hurt her quite a bit. A whole year had passed, and compared to how it looked when he left, the space on the top floor of the library had undergone obvious changes. The overall layout hadn't changed, but some details had become more lifelike. Some unintentional patterns, metal products, decorative flowers, and even lampshades outside the lighting torches, etc. Looking out, the entire brightly lit village below was the same. From this, Liang Yue could also see that with a continuous addition of various strange objects from the heavens and worlds, the stronghold world in front of him was gradually moving away from the blueprint of Magen towards diversification. Regarding this point, even the clothing of the women had begun to become diverse. Of course, Liang Yue felt that the deeper reason was probably because they were a little bored here. Welcome back, amidst the enthusiastic welcome of teacher Jingxiang, Alwyn, and others. Liang Yue gave each of the women he hadn't seen for a long time a warm hug. Afterwards, this guy picked up Nana, who had grown up a bit, and sat down at the dining table. A year had passed, and it wasn't just the surrounding environment that had changed, but also the women in the stronghold world had inevitably undergone some changes. The most obvious of these was naturally Nana. After all, the little girl was still young, only 8 years old, and it was the time when she was growing. In just over half a year, she had grown a whole head taller, her skin had become fairer, and it had become more hydrated and shiny. Set off by her curly dark brown hair, she had already begun to show a bit of alluring beauty. Takashiro Saya had also grown a lot taller. In the year he hadn't seen her, her height had actually surpassed her mother's, and her figure was also hotter. Non-Lixiang's skin, which had originally been tanned to a wheat color due to years of military training and special police duty missions, had now become a piece of crystal white. However, the wildness on her face remained, and her personality was still a bit brash and carefree. Besides that, other people had also undergone some changes, more or less. After all, the environment in the stronghold world was still very nourishing, and at this time, the women had already achieved some success in martial arts cultivation. There was also the earth's spiritual milk, a consumable that could be continuously produced, to assist them. Moreover, with the scavenging and addition of a pile of divine skill secrets such as Ziksha divine art, 9 heavens lightning control, true scripture, Yijin Jing, Zisou Jing, Kaiankan great shift, etc., the Ziksha senior sister and others also decisively changed their cultivation methods. After a period of time, the temperament on their bodies had also begun to change. Only the giant eagle Rachel, after a year, still looked as heroic as ever, however, perhaps because of eating dragon meat for a long time. The little female eagle's original brown feathers had now been dyed with a touch of crimson. I don't know if there will be phenomena such as bloodline evolution. Looking back at Liang Yue himself, after experiencing the chaotic world of military formations and martial arts Jianghu during this whole year, his body had also undergone no small changes. Of course, these changes were mainly concentrated in temperament if you look at it from the outside alone. In addition to relying on the breakthrough of the Xiantian realm, he had grown 3 or 4 centimeters taller again, raising his altitude to 1.92 meters. Whether it was his figure or appearance, there were not many obvious changes. On the contrary, because of the nourishment of Xiantian's hanqi and spiritual level precious medicines, he had faintly begun to become a little younger. After everyone took their seats, just as Liang Yue was raising his wine glass, wanting to take advantage of this opportunity to give an opening speech and express his deep feelings at the dinner table, the system's sudden prompt directly interrupted his thoughts. The upgrade conditions for the stronghold world have now been met. May I ask the host whether to upgrade the stronghold world immediately? I almost forgot about this. When I got the earth crystal before, the system said that the stronghold world could be upgraded, but I had to wait until he returned. Upgrade up. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. First saying that, Liang Yue suddenly looked to the side, to the little female eagle who was standing in front of her special food trough filled with dragon meat, staring at little King Kong with big eyes, and then said, Rachel, the stronghold world will be upgraded soon. There may be some uncontrollable changes in the outside world later. I suggest you better bring your group of little eagles to the village. Teacher Jinxiang's reaction was surprisingly fast at this time. After hearing Liang Yue's words, she almost immediately stood up from her seat, and climbed onto Rachel's broad back in a few steps. I'll go too. Seeing this, Takashiro Saya seemed to also care about her mount, and jumped onto the giant eagle. Alwyn next to her also stepped forward without hesitation, and stood on the eagle's back silently. The other seemed a little hesitant. After more than a year of feeding and companionship, the women had mostly established a good relationship with the giant eagle cubs. After all, this was related to their mount training plan, but Rachel's back obviously couldn't seat everyone. However, in fact, after more than a year of growth, most of these giant eagle cubs were already half-grown and could fly on their own. Teacher Jinxiang and the others were probably only going this time because of emotional needs. Rigaga chirp chirp. Soon, after only half an hour or so, accompanied by a burst of eagle cries from the sky, a dark mass suddenly swept over from the distance. They accompanied the bright stars in the sky, swept up the howling wind, and in just a dozen breaths, they had come to the village from the end of the line of sight. Swish swish swish. Immediately afterwards, they flapped their wings one after another, fluttering down onto the top floor and eaves of the library. There were as many as 200 of them. This is just me. If someone else came, they might not be able to afford to raise them. Looking at these eagle cubs, most of whom were in the molting period and still had a naive and plump appearance, Liang Yue couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth. At this time he gently stroked the back of a little eagle next to him that was already at his chest, and a smell of bird feathers and bird droppings suddenly climbed onto his palm. Rachel on the other side was also straightforward at this time. After letting Liang Yue and the others look at the goods, she directly flapped her wings and chirped a few times. A group of eagle cubs, almost filing the wide roof, heard the sound, and immediately flapped their wings and flew away, falling into various corners of the village with a flurry of falling gray down feathers. Liang Yue also took action at this time, putting a layer of Zixia shield on the table full of delicious food. After everything had settled down, he withdrew his hanky and then said to the system, "Start upgrading." As Liang Yue's voice fell, in an instant, a familiar light-colored membrane enveloped the entire village. Again, the world outside the membrane also began to change accordingly in the sky. Pieces of stars and clouds appeared alternately, and day and night began to rotate rapidly. So fast, light and darkness seemed to be constantly overlapping at this moment. On the hillside outside, the plants that were already unusually lush originally also changed again at this moment. Some trees withered quickly, eventually turning into a piece of sawdust and dust. Some began to grow madly, constantly growing larger and taller at a speed visible to the naked eye, and then became towering trees at the same time. These trees that had grown into giant trees also constantly competed for the living space of other similar trees around them. After a while, under the witness of sunlight and rain, another group of trees withdrew from the competition, and then slowly became decadent and withered on the ground. Various shrubs, small flowers, grass, wild vegetables, mushrooms, medicinal materials, etc., also began to thrive at this time, one crop after another, constantly growing and decaying. During the process, flowers bloomed, fruits were formed, and then they became seeds, and another round of life was re-evolved. The process of prosperity and desolation, growth and decay, seemed to be beckoning to this world. Everyone on the top floor of the library was watching the scenes of vicissitudes of life outside at this time, and they couldn't help but fall into silence and contemplation. Even teacher Jingxiang, who was originally cute and adorable, rarely showed a bit of thought and emotion at this time. The estimated duration of this Stronghold World upgrade is 3 days. Relevant update content has been sent to the system light curtain. Please check it in time. Chapter 272, Moving Mountains and Filing the Sea, Dividing the Land into Rivers. While the women were engrossed in the accelerated time outside, Liang Yue sat on a stone step with a mug of ale. He began to quietly review the upgrade details of the Stronghold World. After thoroughly reading the dense information, he summarized a few important points. First, his villagers could finally go to the real world where he lived. This was excellent news for the ladies who were bored in the Mick world. However, they would still need Liang Yue's permission to enter and exit. Second, a new batch of villager slots had been refreshed, with 10 slots issued. This time the number wasn't high, so Liang Yue would still have to conserve them as before. Third, after the upgrade, the Stronghold World now had 4 seasons. Previously, climate and temperature in the Mick world were only affected by terrain height, but now seasonal changes were included. This undoubtedly signified that the world was moving towards a normal trajectory. However, Liang Yue didn't care much about this. As a congenital master, normal weather and temperature changes no longer affected him. Teacher Shizuka and the others were a bit weaker than him, but their martial arts cultivation was also progressing well, so they probably wouldn't mind temperature changes either. Only Delina, being young and having a shorter cultivation time, might need to add some clothes, but that wasn't a big problem with infinite lava on hand. They could just build a lava furnace and warm themselves if they felt cold. The village's plantation would likely be affected and require adjustments. The previous situation where all kinds of seasonal fruits could be planted on a high tower without restraint might be gone forever. Fourth, after the upgrade, the energy level of the Stronghold World would increase. Overall, the world type would change from a low magic game world to a mid-level martial arts game world. Liang Yue's established development path was mainly focused on martial arts cultivation, although he had obtained arcane elements, a skill that only high-end elemental saints could master, and had also obtained a lot of magical knowledge. If he really wanted to achieve something on this path, weren't there dungeons? The Grand Forest series of dungeons was definitely the most suitable place to cultivate and comprehend the arcane element skill. After all, the two originally came from the DNF world. But, speaking of dungeons, I seem to have a chance to draw a random dungeon, right? Thinking of this, Liang Yue couldn't help but stroke his chin. But he quickly suppressed the thought. Now wasn't the time to consider this. The fifth point of this Stronghold World upgrade was a very interesting feature that was Liang Yue had obtained a chance to change the terrain of the Stronghold World. Although he could do this with his mid-game character's abilities given enough time, the opportunity Liang Yue had now was a larger scale change mode. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say it was moving mountains and filling seas, or drawing lines to create rivers, as long as he planned the desired template on the model specified by the system and handed it over. The change would become a reality soon, whether it was rivers, lakes, seas, mountains, or hills. He could control them all. However, this ability to change terrain and move mountains and fill seas wasn't unrestrained, and there were some limitations and restrictions. For example, in terms of modification range, Liang Yue could only operate on the area on his map with a thought. The map that hadn't been used for a long time suddenly appeared in his hand. A glance showed that, well, more than half of the ground on the entire map was still unexplored. Some of the black fog on the edges was still connected in large patches. It seemed that during his absence, although the women in the stronghold world had gone out many times, they ultimately hadn't included exploring this world in their schedule. But thinking about it, that made sense. These ladies were very busy every day, having to cultivate, go to dungeons, help him manage the village's plantation, and occasionally repair, decorate, and embellish the buildings in the village from time to time. They also had to run to the eagle's nest to cultivate their relationship with the giant eagle cubs, and so on. Carefully calculating, they really didn't have much free time left in a day. What are you doing with the map? Are you planning to go on an adventure in a new place? Sayatakachi leaned on him at this time, holding a glass of red wine, her face flushed, and her breath smelling of alcohol as she spoke. You know about the upgrade of the stronghold world this time, right? Looking at the pink-haired girl so close, Liang Yue gently put his arm around her waist and asked with a smile, yeah, we just received a system prompt saying that we can go to the real world where you are, but we have to get your consent first. The girl pouted with some dissatisfaction upon hearing this. That's just one of them. There are actually quite a few upgrade contents this time. With that, Liang Yue told Sayatakaji and the women who had gradually recovered their senses about the update information on the system panel. Hearing him say that he had a chance to change the terrain of the stronghold world, and that the change range was subject to the map, the ladies also took out their own. Even Xia Azeo, Yang Buhu, and Nana, who had recently joined, had already prepared a map. Since the villagers and Liang Yue, the host, had a natural team relationship, the map content between them was common. The content after everyone explored the map would be shared on it. Therefore, upon seeing this, the women noticed a problem. It seems that we need to explore the map as soon as possible. We can plan it well then, but this time, we have to wait until the changes outside are over at the earliest, huh? Then we have to wait for 3 more days. Gahi, that's right. With Rachel, we should be able to complete the map exploration soon. While discussing, Liang Yue and the others returned to the wine table after eating and drinking. Before long, the women gradually became a little carried away under the influence of alcohol. Even Nana, who had stayed in the stronghold world for more than half a year, had completely adapted to life here. The girl secretly drank a glass of ale at the dinner table, and now she was a little dizzy, with a silly smile on her face. Seeing this, Liang Yue just smiled lightly, grabbed a handful of pine nuts, and while cracking them, contacted the system again. System, I want to check the mission rewards this time. Chapter 273 Dual Sword Mastery. Ling. After testing, in this Zhushan Experience's main mission, expel the Tartars and restore China, the host achieved the mission goal in less than half the mission time limit. In response, the system's reward is that the number of points is multiplied by 3, and in this additional lottery reward, the host can add a keyword to influence the selection range of the prizes. Ding. After testing, in this Zhushan Experience's side mission, Secret Transmission of Divine Skills, the host completed the mission with a quantity many times exceeding the mission requirements. In response, the system's reward is that the number of points is multiplied by 3, and the random skill gift box is multiplied by 3. Ding. After testing, in this Zhushan Experience's side mission, above an 8, the host achieved the mission goal. In response, the system's reward is 1,000 points, and 1 random innate enlightenment item from the martial arts system. Huh? That random skill gift box, it directly gave me 3 of them. So generous? That's rare, but how is the task of expelling the Tartars calculated? Is it not enough to drive a group of Yuan Meng's leaders out of China? Are those soldiers also counted? But fortunately, a 3-fold reward is enough. It's just that the reward in terms of points is a little less. It would be great if there was another mission to earn points by defeating alien races. As for this third one, this thing of martial arts innate enlightenment is interesting. I don't know to what extent the system can make the reward. In fact, Liang Yue cares most about the enlightenment content brought by this above innate. Among the several rewards of this experience mission, it is important to know that the thing of innate enlightenment is not only the cultivator's own understanding of the various principles and rules of the world, nor is it only acting within the scope of idealism. Of course, this is also very important, but more importantly, in the myriad worlds of Zhushan, The so-called innate enlightenment actually represents a martial artist's initial application of the natural laws of heaven, integrate a certain phenomenon in nature with oneself, harmonize and unify, and stimulate corresponding supernatural powers. The power of this kind of supernatural power is limited, and it is certainly impossible to turn clouds and rain like advanced cultivators, or even move mountains and seas, and destroy the world. But in the same realm, cultivators who have comprehended this ability can, to a certain extent, form a crushing trend against other martial artists, of course. It is also possible that what Liang Yue ultimately draws is just an ordinary innate level life experience after all. The myriad worlds of Zhushan are too big, and there are too many types of worlds. There are high-energy worlds, but there are more low-level planes, so just don't rush. Slowly, one by one, suppressing the expectation in his heart, Liang Yue rubbed his palms unconsciously at this time, and then turned his gaze to the reward of the main mission again. System, I want to draw a lottery, the one for the main mission, Ling. The lottery session is ready, please add keywords, host the keyword, let's use, skills. After thinking for a while, Liang Yue finally decided to use skills as the limit. After all, this field is actually very reliable, especially since he now has a certain magic foundation, and also possesses the mysteries of elements, Ling. Congratulations to the host for drawing the passive skill Dual Sword Mastery in this lottery session. This skill comes from the assassin profession in the DNF world after being transformed by the system. When equipped with dual swords, this skill can passively increase the host's attack speed, attack power, enemy stiffness time, and reduce his own stiffness time when releasing moves and skills. This skill is good. It's like it was prepared for me on purpose. This luck, it's amazing. Looking at the remaining two crossed sword-shaped skill icons in front of him after the lottery turntable faded away, the corners of Liang Yue's mouth couldn't help but curl up slightly. It was just in the next moment, before he could react, the icon suddenly turned into a stream of light and got into his brain. The sudden discomfort on his forehead made Liang Yue groan unconsciously, and he unconsciously rubbed his temples with both hands. However, he had already experienced a lot of things like this after all, and compared with a previous reception of mysteries of elements, the current dual sword mastery was not worth mentioning at all before and after. It took only 5 minutes for this skill to be received by him. How is it, Liang Yue-kun? Did it succeed? Seeing that his complexion had returned to normal, Shizuka-sensei gently pinched his shoulders at this time, with an expectant look on her face. Well, success is naturally a success, but this dual sword mastery seems a little different from what I thought before. Liang Yue scratched his chin at this time, and said with some helplessness in his heart, the reason is that although this skill is called dual sword mastery, the dual swords in the DNF game world are quite different from the dual swords he usually uses. The dual swords in the game are actually a pair of short swords, a little longer than daggers. But compared with a pair of long swords that Liang Yue usually uses, they are far inferior and appear much smaller. Moreover, as a common weapon of the assassin profession, it inherently limits its size, weight, and style and skills of operation to a certain extent. The assassin's combat method is almost diametrically opposed to Liang Yue's usual swordsmanship. What made him somewhat helpless was that although this dual sword mastery skill could also help him increase the power of his usual dual swords after being transformed by the system, and was no longer limited to the dual sword equipment in DNF, but this skill itself also brought him a lot of skills about the use of assassin's dual swords. If you want to improve the level of this skill, you must first learn to use these skills. Listening to what you said, the methods and styles in the dual sword mastery skill seem very similar to some of our elven martial arts. Alwyn seemed a little curious at this time, and her eyes were exceptionally crystal clear. This is normal. This dual sword mastery was originally a skill of the Dark Elf clan in another world, and it is related to your elf clan. Liang Yue heard this, touched her little hand, and shrugged. Then you should have accumulated a lot of skills on your body now, right? Is there anything better than language mastery? Nanguang Liu Xiang's voice sounded behind him at this time, with a hint of drunken naivety in her voice. Yes. I was just about to tell you about this afterwards. Liang Yue explained to everyone that after the system authority was upgraded before, he had increased the shared skills between him and the villagers to 3. Then, he simply revealed his personal attribute panel. Liang Yue identity, martial arts practitioner, early stage innate master, internal strength, 85,000 magic power, 29,722 strength, 357 agility, 421 constitution, 391 energy, 684 bloodline, human, sealed, talents, energetic, affinity, fire resistance, obtained by bathing in dragon blood, abilities, hair manipulation skills, language mastery, ricochet, advanced gun mastery, basic swordsmanship, observation, magic showdown, Erhu mastery, sweep, elemental mysteries, dual sword mastery abilities, simple tool making, mech game character, gun mastery cultivation techniques, anti-joint grappling, innate purple haze cover, primal chaos art, Hang Shan swordsmanship, crossing the river with a reed, unnamed meditation, Desu fist, nameless sword manual, great shift of the universe, purple haze divine art, swift meteor, 9 yin divine claw, soul shifting technique, flame blade elemental mysteries. Takagi Saya, who was on the side, rested her head directly on Liang Yue's shoulder at this time, looked at his personal attribute panel, and a gleam of light flashed in her eyes. She immediately discovered the key content in his skill bar. Liang Yue heard this, the corner of his mouth curved, and then he explained to everyone, elemental mysteries is a good skill, and it is also a very advanced one. It consumed one of my unlimited level lotteries to get it. It contains a lot of magical knowledge and theory. If you really settle down to study it, I believe it won't be long before you can become a master in the field of elements. Of course, the premise is that you must have a method of magic cultivation. Chapter 274 Take Sunjing, by Bai Shou. His also painful. Liang Yujin, it hurts, woo woo, it feels like my brain is about to explode, hiss ugh, I can't hold on much longer, how much longer will it take, damn it. Hiss, Liang Yue. This old lady can't hold on anymore. Hurry up and think of a solution, duh. Gaga, you have to hold on even if you can't, after all, this is your own choice. You have to know that I also suffered for a whole day back then looking at the group of young ladies in front of him, slumped on the bed, rolling around, their brows furrowed, and all kinds of muffled groans of pain coming from their mouths. Liang Yue crossed his arms at this time, leaned against the door frame, and unconsciously twitched a corner of his mouth, revealing a mouthful of big white teeth. Ugh. A whole day. Why didn't you, cough, why didn't you say so earlier? Non-Lixi and bitter teeth at this time, trying to sit up from the bed, and then looked at him with a grim expression while holding her head. I was just afraid that you would back down. Besides, the profound meaning of elements is a high-level skill after all. It shouldn't have been something that people at our stage should master. Now that you want to get it into your brains, you naturally need to pay some price. If it's just as simple as a day of pain, then you can only say that you've gained a great advantage. Slowly closing the door of the cabin, as soon as he turned his head, he found that a large number of little eagle cubs had already landed around the roof of the library, and a dark cloud was constantly circling in the sky looking at the giant eagle Rachel, who was also lying on the ground at this moment, rolling around and moaning softly. Those pairs of eagle eyes also showed anxiety, especially you, Rachel. I know this feeling is very uncomfortable, but you are different from the others. They can all cultivate and become stronger, but you don't have this condition here for the time being. If you can master this profound meaning of elements, it may be a good opportunity for you. After speaking, Liang Yue looked at the dark cloud of little eagles around him, glanced at the down feathers that kept falling in the air, and then continued, go away. Rachel is getting stronger. Besides, watching the pain of the elders is not something you should do. Although, there is no formal magic side cultivation method for the time being, after listening to Liang Yue's description, Saya, Takagi, Alwan and others are still enthusiastic about this profound meaning of element skill. Under the collective request of everyone, Liang Yue naturally couldn't spoil the young lady's interest, so he could only satisfy them like this. Moreover, the reasons given by these young ladies before seem to be very sufficient. That is, since there is such a powerful skill, and there is corresponding magic knowledge in hand, even if there is no magic power cultivation method, can't you understand it yourself? To this, Liang Yue was really speechless when he obtained this skill. He naturally thought about the possibilities. He also thought about creating a set of magic power cultivation methods that conformed to the knowledge system provided by the profound meaning of elements, but later he gave up. The reason is this guy is too lazy, and he really doesn't have that time. Swift meteor, 9 yin white bone claw, soul transferring technique, flame blade, hair manipulation, and even the shale and unique skill golden bell shield that needs to be completely analyzed theoretically before it can be transformed. The cultivation of these various martial arts skills and abilities has already occupied too much of Liang Yue's energy. In addition, he has to constantly travel between various regions of China on weekdays. Later, he would even go deep into the Mongolian grasslands alone, constantly beheading the remaining forces of the Yuan Ming dynasty. It can be said that he simply couldn't spare the time to create a magic side cultivation method based on this profound meaning of elements. The same is true now after more than half a year of high-intensity actual combat training in the Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber world. The various martial arts that Liang Yue had cultivated before have now achieved some success, including the Golden Bell Shield magic skill. It has now been changed to innate Purple Key Shield. However, Liang Yue's cultivation progress is far more than this. After putting these various martial arts on the right track, there are even more important tasks waiting for him next, that is the choice of the main cultivation method. To be honest, when teacher Shizuka, senior sister Zixu, and others were willing to stand up and take on the task of creating a magic power cultivation method, Liang Yue was actually very happy in his heart. Doghead, sigh, waving his hand to disperse the surrounding group of little eagles, Liang Yue sat back at the dining table, took a big gulp of malt wine, and leaned comfortably on the sofa. Squeak squeak. Little King Kong jumped onto the table with a piece of dragon meat in his arms, pointed to Rachel, who was rolling around not far away, and then pointed to his monkey head. You also want the profound meaning of element skill? No, your Beeman clan is born without any connection to magic. Don't you know this basic common sense? Squeak squeak, which is to say that your behemoth bodies can't cultivate magic unless you mutate one day. Otherwise, little guy, you shouldn't even think about it. Squeak, looking at Little Kong's disappointed expression as he ran back to Rachel's food trough to gorge himself, Liang Yue shook his head speechlessly. Then, with a flip of his sleeve, 3 wooden boxes painted red appeared on the table in front of him. These were the 3 random skill gift boxes that the system had issued to him after completing the side quest Secret Divine Skill. The time to test my luck has come. Come out, my divine skill. As soon as Liang Yue's voice fell, the one in the middle of the 3 boxes on the table began to tremble non-stop, as if there was a lively fish inside. However, in the blink of an eye, this fish seemed to have evolved into rabbit. And the vibration of the wooden box began to become more and more violent, with bursts of muffled sounds constantly coming from inside. Suddenly, accompanied by a soft crack sound, a crack appeared on the top. Then came the second, the third, many more. After a muffled poof sound, the original intact and thick wooden box burst directly into a pile of sawdust. A blue-covered secret book then appeared on the table. Liang Yue brushed away the pile of fine pieces, and 3 striking block letters immediately came into his view. 8 trigrams. Palm, are you messing with me, system? This secret book. After a burst of winking and tangled thoughts, Liang Yue took a deep breath, and then began to suppress his temper. Picked up the secret book, and began to flip through it page by page. When he finished flipping through the last page, the secret book immediately turned into a stream of light and drilled into his forehead. It's just a national martial arts secret book, but it's quite formal, and it can even play telepathic transmission. Seeing this, Liang Yue immediately rolled his eyes, and then helplessly began to rub his temples, concentrating on receiving the content in his mind. About 3 minutes later, the skill was completely received. 8 trigrams. Palm takes its method from saber techniques. Single exchange palm is a single saber, double exchange palm is a double saber. The footwork is a twist and a buckle, emphasizing attacking the weak points. That's right, this is the famous national martial art 8 trigrams palm, created by Grandmaster Dong Haichuan, also known as swimming body. 8 trigrams palm and continuous 8 trigrams palm. The palm force is mainly based on yin and soft hidden strength, and it especially emphasizes the cultivation and coordination of body techniques and internal strength. Practitioners of this palm technique are generally very ruthless when fighting with others. A seemingly gentle palm strike can often make you feel uncomfortable all over. Even more, it can directly injure a person's internal organs. For someone like Liang Yue, whose physical fitness is extremely strong, once he uses this skill, its power will naturally be different from other ordinary practitioners. In addition, this 8 trigrams palm secret book also records a lot about the cultivation methods of the 3 levels of Ming Jin, and Jin, and Hua Jin that he saw in novels in his previous life. In the process of cultivation, this skill seems to be able to help him better master the strength in his body. Even compared to the Great Hammer Fist, it has a certain supplementary effect if, on this basis, it is used together with the true energy of a martial artist, and the power can definitely reach a higher level. However, even so, Liang Yue was still a little confused. He is already at the innate realm, so why would he open such a basic national martial arts secret book? Could it be that the system thinks my foundation is not well laid, or is it that I'm just unlucky today? Damn it, never mind. Continue opening boxes. As soon as Liang Yue's voice fell, a skill gift box on the left in front of him began to tremble. After a confrontation, it still did not escape the fate of being blasted into powder. Taijuan Sutra. Looking at the pile of secret books that popped out of the box somewhat abruptly in front of him, Liang Yue rolled his eyes again, waved his sleeve, and with a thought, Directly put the secret books on the bookshelf on the second floor of the library. This Taijuan Sutra also comes from the Jin Yuan martial arts world in terms of power. It can be ranked among the top-level inherited divine skills. The composition of this divine skill is roughly the same as the 9 Yin manual, including internal skills, lightness skills, swordsmanship, boxing, palm techniques, and other peerless martial arts. But when it comes to power, the ranking of this Taijuan Sutra in Jin Yuan's martial arts may still be above the 9 Yin manual, 9 Yang manual, Great Shift of the Universe, Duyu 9 Swords, and other skills before the innate stage. It is estimated that only the Northern Darkness divine art can rely on its bug-like ability to absorb power to suppress this Taijuan Sutra. But after reaching the innate realm, everything is hard to say. If Liang Yue were to rank them, he would definitely put this Taijuan Sutra in first place. Unfortunately, I'm already at the innate realm, and my body is full of purple cloud true energy, which has already reached the top of Jin Yuan's martial arts. I've already practiced the 9 Yin divine claw, flame blade, swift meteor, and so on. Now you want me to change to practice such a hodgepodge of skills? Are you out of your mind, Alice? After letting out a deep sigh, Liang Yue then focused his gaze on the remaining random skill gift box on the table. Chapter 275 Eternal Spring Skill. With a soft poof sound, the last technique gift box also exploded into a pile of powder. This time, in the center of the sawdust, was a book about the thickness of a finger, with a delicate cover. The dark green surface was printed with unknown plant-like patterns. It didn't look like a simple thing. Seeing this, Liang Yue raised his eyebrows, and brushed away the debris from the secret manual behind him. The 3 ancient seal characters of Chongchuan Gong immediately came into his view. Is it the legendary eternal youth and longevity Chongchuan Gong? Or is it just something else, a technique from an unknown sect? With a hint of doubt and faint sadness in his heart, Liang Yue then picked up the manual somewhat carelessly, and while leaning on the backrest, he slowly began to browse through it. Originally, according to his thinking, with his current realm, even if he couldn't draw some extremely powerful inheritance from a high martial world, he should at least get a reliable technique to allow him to transition safely, right? For example, 3 points return to origin key, 10,000 swords return to the sect, profound martial true art or something. Even if it wasn't that good, you should at least give me a longevity art or something. But it turned out to be a Chongchuan Gong. The name alone sounds very ordinary. Okay, with such a trace of dissatisfaction in his heart, Liang Yue curled up on the sofa and began to read the contents of the manual. While reading, he also poured malt liquor into his mouth in a nonchalant manner. However, only a moment later, a few traces of suspicion slowly appeared on this guy's face. He closed the book, threw the glass aside, closed his eyes and pondered for a while, then flipped through the cover and the first few pages of the manual again. Only then did he continue reading with a somewhat strange expression. During the process of reading, Liang Yue's eyebrows were sometimes furrowed and sometimes relaxed as time passed. The expression on his face no longer had the casual look it had before. After he roughly read through the Chongchuan Gong from beginning to end, and flipped the manual to the last few pages, his whole person jumped up from the sofa. Damn! This manual is really the Chongchuan Gong. Unable to believe it in his heart, Liang Yue couldn't help but flip through the last few pages of the manual again. At this time, fireball technique, soul stabilizing charm, wind control art, object manipulation, heavenly eye technique, palm thunder, golden light curse. This is actually a cultivation technique. No way. Looking at the Chongchuan Gong manual in his hand, Liang Yue's mouth had unconsciously grinned to the root of his ears at this time, and his heart couldn't help but fall into a burst of ecstasy. Immediately, he began to continue flipping through the contents of the pages. While unconsciously wandering quickly on the roof, a burst of excited energy emanated from his body, staring at those few things at the end of the manual, which seemed to be only the most common and lowest level spells in the cultivation world. His eyes were almost glued to the pages for a time. His flexible brain began to run rapidly, constantly associating the origin of this thing. After a while, he finally had a seemingly correct answer in his heart. If Liang Yue guessed correctly, the manual in front of him should be the Chongchuan Gong that Han Lamo practiced on Mount Kixun when he was a child. In a record of a mortal's journey to immortality, it was passed down from his master to the scheming Dr. Mo, and at the end of the manual, there are also a few basic spells appended. Liang Yue was deeply impressed by this plot. In his previous life at first, he didn't think about it. After all, how could there be such a coincidence? Moreover, with his current innate realm, he couldn't temporarily connect with the path of cultivation. However, in the process of reading this manual, Liang Yue discovered that the content recorded in this Chongchun Gong seemed to reveal a strange aura everywhere. The root of it is that although the initial stage of cultivation of this manual is also about finding the key sensation, however, in the process of cultivation, it is not like his own magical skills, which circulate the internal force of a martial artist, but directly absorbs the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Moreover, from Liang Yue's current martial arts insight that has reached the innate level, if he absorbs the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into his body according to the method taught by this technique, the energy cultivated may be very good at nourishing and replenishing the body. But its power is definitely not as solid as martial arts' true ki. However, when he saw the second half of the manual, his whole person was shocked again, because, in the records of this technique, the innate realm does not seem to be anything remarkable, and even it can't even be considered a threshold. As long as you follow the ideas of this manual and cultivate to the 8th level, you can advance to the innate level smoothly. After that, this Chongchun Gong also has more profound levels of the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th levels. Only after cultivating to that level will you reach the real threshold and bottleneck. What realm would that be? Liang Yue still found it difficult to see any reliable means of defense from the attributes of this technique throughout the whole book. The energy cultivated by Chongchun Gong, from beginning to end, almost only has the content of nourishing life and developing the body's potential until Liang Yue saw those 7 spells at the back of this manual. At this time, he suddenly realized and woke up from the fog outlined by this Chongchun Gong. This is not a martial arts manual at all. But how do I remember that Han Lao in the original A Record of a Mortal's Journey to Immortality once said that after practicing the secret manual, there can be no martial artist's true energy in the body. At this thought, Liang Yue almost instantly woke up from his initial ecstasy. Then, as his eyes wandered, this guy began to constantly search for various reasons in his mind, trying to overturn his conclusion. This should be the lie that Dr. Mo concocted to prevent Han Lao from being distracted. Right, that's not right either. Did that child also try it later? It's just because he couldn't practice martial arts, nor could he use it to drive martial arts techniques, so he chose the blinking sword technique that could kill without internal force. But at that time, Han Lao seemed to just say that after learning the evergreen skill, he could no longer practice martial arts internal skills. The reason was probably because the energy level cultivated by this evergreen skill was too high. After all, this is spiritual power directly converted from absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, which can at least be equivalent to innate level true energy. Now, if I can go against the grain and use the power of martial arts to convert to spiritual power, maybe it will work? After a period of restlessness and entanglement, Liang Yue sat on the sofa again, flipping through the secret manual of evergreen skill several times. Afterward, he solemnly put it into his storage space. In fact, in his heart, he was already a little impatient at this time, and wanted to find a quieter place to try it out quickly. However, cultivation is something that can never be rushed. If there are any concerns in the heart, it will ultimately be impossible to achieve perfection, especially when his concerns are still somewhat difficult to let go of. System, I want to draw that innate martial arts inside. Walking to the edge of the library roof, Liang Yue, while looking at the constantly changing celestial phenomena outside, and the plants that were growing wildly and withering, said to the system. As soon as he finished speaking, a somewhat special lottery turntable instantly appeared in front of him. There were not many items available for selection on this turntable. Roughly counting, there seemed to be only 49, and the angular space occupied by each item was also different, no longer the equal share as before. Some were only as big as a needle's eye, while others were large enough to fit Liang Yue's palm. At first glance, it looked like a snail shell-shaped scale dial. At this time, the items placed in these different shares were also of various shapes and forms. Some rippled like water, some were as ethereal as a cloud, some resembled a ball of restless flames, and some looked like just a piece of flowing sand. There were also some that looked like intangible substances, empty and nothing, but in Liang Yue's current innate level spiritual perception, he could faintly feel the trace of a mysterious thing on them. In addition to this, there were also various sword-shaped, plant-shaped, frost lightning, and other special forms of matter. Seeing this situation, even if Liang Yue thought about it with his fingers, he could understand that the smaller the share occupied by the various martial arts insights on the turntable, the more precious it must be. Ling. The martial arts innate insight selection has been arranged. May I ask if the host will start the extraction immediately? Draw. Start. Looking at the turntable in front of him, Liang Yue narrowed his eyes at this time, and then stared at the turntable closely, giving the order in an instant. The pointer in the middle of the turntable began to rotate rapidly, and in the blink of an eye, It had exceeded his observation and calculation limit. This running speed is much faster than the general lottery mode. Seeing this, Liang Yue immediately rolled his eyes, so he no longer placed any hope on it, and directly ordered stop. Ling. Congratulations to the host for drawing a composite innate martial arts insight, Thunderfire Wood. May I ask if you want to start the transmission Thunderfire and Wood? What is this? Hearing this, Liang Yue looked at the tree stump floating in front of him after the turntable disappeared, with flames all over its body and traces of electric arcs, and said speechlessly ding. A certain martial arts practitioner, under a chance encounter, observed an ancient tree that failed to sublimate in the heavenly tribulation. Under the urging of thunder and fire, a new mutated sapling was accidentally born on the incomplete shell of the ancient tree. Later, he felt the power of life, and under the guidance of the opportunity, he realized the composite innate realm of Thunderfire Woodham. After hearing the system's words, Liang Yue immediately put away a trace of contempt in his heart, and then fixed his eyes on the tree stump in front of him, which had been reduced by several times. Sure enough, in the center of the scorched tree stump, a small, tender yellow twig was sprouting and growing there under the reflection of the surrounding flames and tears. This branch appeared particularly petite and weak, but it was full of an unusual aesthetic of life. Even under the interweaving of thunder and fire, seemingly weak life can take root and sprout under the old shell, shed the remains, and usher in new life. Thinking of this, a moment of emotion arose in Liang Yue's heart. After a moment, a burst of bright light began to flicker in his eyes. Immediately, he silently came to the battlements on the edge of the roof, sat down cross-legged on the spot, looking at the forest outside that was constantly withering and rejuvenating, and remained silent for a long time. It wasn't until there were no more distractions in his heart that he continued to say to the system, "Start the transmission." End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.